Thursday night, everybody. CrossFire, New York. Listen, I got to tell you, so, me and Crap, for podcasting for years, we used to always say the show must go on. A little under the weather. I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't even let the panel know. Really not feeling the greatest, but there's so much news and there's so much going on that the show must go on. The show must go on. That being said, I want to say thanks to everybody that's here. Please go ahead, hit that like button. Let's see if we can get over 200 likes during the show tonight. That would be fantastic. I don't know if that's going to happen. We sure can try. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Your name comes up in lights. That would be great as well. Tweet it out. Let everybody know that we are live. Can't even say tweet anymore. Repost. Repost doesn't have the same synergy that retweet had. But nonetheless, guys, look at that fantastic description down there. That gives you a little synopsis of what's going on tonight. Right above it, it's the join button. That's how you get your name in green in the chat and become part of the Mooch Maniac family members. I appreciate that. I was just talking to a couple people behind the scenes before the show as well. And like I was telling you, just a quick plug, go over to twitch.tv, Mooch TV, same thing. Drop the O's for zeros, M00CHTV everywhere. Go over and join me on Twitch. We are going to be doing a lot of streaming starting end of March is when we're going to kick it off. So if you go over there and hit that, we're going to really appreciate it over here on this channel as well. So we're going to bring some content over from Twitch too here as we do the VODs. And we make a little bit of edits and make some great little videos for you guys as we go through the week. Nonetheless, I got an outstanding panel here for you. I've got 11 topics. 11. We'll probably hit 3. But there's 11 anyways. That's how prepared we are for you. Okay? Without further ado, the one, the only, and tonight might be one of the nights he grandstands, and I know he brought his soapbox. The great Crap Gamer is back on the show after a week off. Crap, how the hell are you doing tonight, buddy?
It's good because, I think like the news today, a lot of people expected it. And even with that, it's still like when they finally come out, I think it was kind of like a smack, it's going to be different for everybody. But I think the main takeaway that I get is like these guys are kind of cowards, right? Because remember last year, this time they were holding that emergency meeting or whatever, and it's just 4 games. And,
that's right.
This kind of stuff. And now it's just like they don't even say anything. I mean, like Phil did a couple podcasts or whatever, but they really should have done a better job of just going, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. Just be honest about it. Instead of, we're certainly going to do more hardware ambiguously or whatever.
Right.
I think that's the thing. Like everybody's kind of left wondering, what's up. And I think that's like the worst part. Like Phil, like nobody asked Phil the real questions. I would love to get to interview Phil because I would ask him the real questions, and it's just kind of crazy to me that, nobody really bothers to ask the guy questions that
well, they were saying this is all rumor, but they were saying he was kind of getting annoyed even with the questions he was being asked, which is at this point, and that's one of the things I was going to say with the Phil Spencer interview is at this point, I want to go through the rest of the intros here, Crap. So actually literally write that down because I'm going to come back to you on it. But I do think we're going to talk about Phil and the interviews, and I mean, how many more interviews does he have to give here? But let me, Crap, write that down because I will come back to you on that. Okay. I want to introduce the great gaming with Persona. Persona, listen, it wouldn't be a CrossFire with Persona on it unless it had absolutely sizzling hot topics. And they really, and the audience loves you, Persona. I don't know how this love affair began here, but they absolutely love you. Persona, great to have you back on the show, buddy. Tonight is the night that I'm just so glad you said you could make it. How are you this evening?
Yeah, first off, shout out to the panel. Shout out to everybody, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate the invite. Always, Mooch.
Always.
And, listen, from one New Yorker to another, I got you, bro.
Thank you.
I got you, bro. Go Mets.
Yes, thank you. Let's go, Soto.
Listen, I'm a Mets fan until I die, man.
Thank you.
100%. But listen, shout out to the chat. And you're right, Mooch. When I first started coming on the show, the chat was, Mooch, if you bring that Persona guy back, I'm unsubscribing. I'm out. I do not like him. But now the chat has rolled up to me. They love me. They've accepted me, Mooch.
Yes, they have.
I'm in the fold, right? Even if they don't agree with me, they still like, it's Persona. I like Persona. So we're gonna rock out. So shout out to the chat. Make sure you guys hit the like button, share this podcast out, and with the topics, especially the recent news today, Mooch.
Yes.
I know it's going to be a very entertaining show, and I know your show's going to get clipped up.
Oh, absolutely. Why not? Thank you for spreading it, by the way, to all those out there. I appreciate the free
I'm happy to be here, man.
Thank you, Persona. I appreciate it. And listen, it's funny. The audience loves Nib. And Nib, listen, I have no problem. Nib you're supposed to be on last week. Listen, it's 12 o'clock right now. It's 12:13 a.m. for both Nib and Deathsinger. So, Nib, you don't ever have to explain. But I think it's that charismatic voice you have. You know, people say, oh, Mooch, we love that you have a sports New York, radio voice. I keep hearing that by everybody, which I appreciate. But, Nib, you speak, people listen. I don't know how you do it, but I don't care about last week. You're here this week. Nib, how you doing this morning over there?
I'm good.
In London.
But I like Persona's voice he did just to say, "Hey guys, I don't want."
I used to want him to be a voice actor when I was young.
Nib, you should go. You got to listen to Persona do his solo cast. That's where he shines. Trust me when I tell you. But Nib, great to have you here, buddy, tonight. And let me introduce the great Deathsinger as well. Deathsinger, I know it's also 12:13 a.m. over there for you guys, both of you, and I appreciate you being here. But Deathsinger, I don't believe you sleep at all. That's what I've come to know you over the past few years. You just don't sleep. You game, work, eat, and podcast. So it's great to have you here tonight.
Oh, I definitely sleep.
We're not sure.
It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
And it's a great panel. And this is a freebie, right?
Yes.
PlayStation will finally have a Horizon game that actually won awards.
Jeez.
Crazy.
You got to get, you're going to get Persona all worked up, and it's not even 20 minutes into the show.
How many times I've heard that joke today?
I know,
you guys are original as your strategies.
It's unbelievable.
Hey, man, shout out to ChatGPT. Write me another essay.
At least it will be original.
Shout out to Deathsinger. Deathsinger's been waiting all day to use that, by the way, folks, okay? His open mic night is any day now.
He's been practicing it in the mirror. He's looking at the mirror, repeating it over and over.
Shout out to Deathsinger.
Certainly going to be interesting to see now that Gran Turismo and Forza can go head-to-head what the outcome will actually be and who's the better performer.
Well, I think we know the answer to that, David, but nonetheless, the great David Faulkner's with us tonight. And listen, whenever quarterly reviews come out, that's when we have to get the resident gaming community accountant out here, David from Down Under, joining us. David, what time is it actually over there in Australia? Could the audience know?
It's no secret. It's 11:15 a.m. in the future on Friday, the 31st of January. It is a lovely day outside. The world is just as crazy and chaotic as it was on the 30th of January. And we're still here.
Well, listen, if you could just send me, look online since you're already into tomorrow and let me know what New York's lotto numbers are. Thanks, Dave. Just send that to the DM. I appreciate it. Great to have you here as well. So, here's the thing. Let's get started here. We got the audience ready to go. By the way, shout out to the great Jimmy Harrison who's here. Jimmy says, yo, good to see you, brothers. Best damn show, as well as What's Up PlayStation. I completely agree with that, Jimmy. Jim, great to see you. I appreciate it. Guys, keep the super chats coming. We really appreciate it. Send all kinds of questions to the chat and the panel, and we'll get those answered as well. So yeah, basically we're sitting here and we're looking at, I had so many other things I wanted to go over with you guys, but listen, the big news is Forza Horizon 5 coming to PS5, right? And the only reason I'm putting Persona on the hot seat, because I know once you chime in here, it's going to be the Crap Gamer Show, which is, by the way, a phenomenal show.
Crap Gamer Show, Crap Gamer Show.
Brought to you by...
Welcome to the show. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, I appreciate it, Crap. But Persona, listen, and really it's kind of a one and then a 1-2. So it's Forza Horizon 5 coming to PS5 this spring, right? Can we assume now, and we heard people say throughout the grapevine in the gaming community, that Halo and Gears is to follow. But really, is this because this is an after effect, if you will? It's just because you have Microsoft, their gaming fiscal year 25 quarter 2, it didn't show good numbers. So in order to get those numbers up, how do you do that? Well, you put your product in other places and sell. And Phil said that in the interview. But I mean, was this a shock, even though we kind of knew it was going to come anyways? Everyone was saying Forza Horizon was coming like end of last year. Here it is. Were you taken by shock or not at all, Persona?
Yeah, man. So first off, I forgot to do one thing, Mooch. You always have like 10 topics and we only get to like 2 or 3. So Chad, I'm taking bets. I think we're only getting through 1 or 2.
Might have been.
I'm going to be honest tonight. 1 or 2.
I said 3.
There's a lot of people on this panel that have a lot to talk about.
Yes.
When it comes to specific things, we getting through maybe 2, maybe 3. I'm saying 2. But Chad, I'm taking bets. Anyway, I'm going to be honest. I'm not I am a bit surprised that it was just kind of just announced out of nowhere. Like there wasn't really any build up or lead up to it. It kind of just dropped and kind of kept it moving. So it was a bit surprised. It was just a random Thursday of like, hey, look, this game is coming to the PlayStation 5 in the spring. Very surprised at that. But am I surprised that this is happening specifically? No, because when you look at the recent interview with Gamertag Radio and with Destin and his channel, Phil Spencer, he has said there's no red lines.
That's right.
There is none. Like period. You know, that goes for Starfield, that goes for anything. So I think seeing that Forza, which is one of the 3 pinnacles of Xbox, you got Gears, Halo, and Forza. Those are that's like the holy grail when you think Xbox now. The fact that that title is now coming to PlayStation and most likely other competing platforms, maybe to Switch to at some point. I think it's safe to say that Gears and Halo will follow suit. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Okay, so let me say this. So, Persona, I do completely agree with you. Crap, I'm going to you here because, and shout out to JC 2013. He says, Halo show tomorrow, PS5 announcement incoming, question mark.
They just announced, okay, so like they did the, it says explosive surprises.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see. Well, this is what it says. Join us. It says join us. It's Halo officially tweeted out. Join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. Pacific for an in-depth look at Halo Infinite's free spring update, including Operation Frontlines roadmap and a few more explosive surprises. Now, again, maybe I don't know if they would do that back to back. I don't think Halo Infinite is the one that's coming to PlayStation right yet. I think they'll do the Master Chief Collection.
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know. That could be like a one more thing. Can you imagine? Hey, here's our big Halo update thing, and one more thing, Halo's going to PlayStation.
Right. Like, I don't see that. I don't see that tomorrow either. I really don't. But overall, crap. I mean, this is something that Persona said it. There's the pillars, and it was a joke a long time ago when they said, "Oh, it's only Halo, Gears, and Forza." Halo, Gears, and Forza. But then, as they expanded into Bethesda and they expanded into Activision, and remember there was all the talks during the Activision, the FTC, and all this other stuff. It was like, no, they're only talking about Activision games. They're only talking about Call of Duty coming over. And then it went to the 4 games, and then people said, "Listen, when one of the pillars, meaning Halo, Gears, or Forza, makes its way over, that's when you wave the white flag." As far as the platform's concerned, not the publisher. Everybody saw that Microsoft publishing is going to be fantastic. But this does kind of put one foot in the grave for the console itself, as you've said a number of times. Without having exclusive games, and you're putting your games on PC, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation, and you can get their exclusives on those respective platforms, where is that incentive to pick up an Xbox moving forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, so if you're like an Xbox owner right now or whatever, and you have an Xbox Series X or S, you'll be good with that probably into 2030 because they'll still be whatever they release, you'll be able to play it on those platforms, right? I guarantee it. Now look at Xbox One; it's still getting games, and we're in 2025. Microsoft isn't putting them on there; they stopped a couple years ago, but you figure at least a decade support. The Series S and X came out in 2020, so you figure 20. So you're good. You don't have to really immediately go, "Oh, I'm going to trade in my Xbox." You built up a library. Whatever, you can keep it, you can play on it, whatever. I would advise. My advice would be, I wouldn't buy new Xbox hardware, and I certainly probably wouldn't buy games on Xbox. Because the vibes they're giving me is almost like Sega Dreamcast vibes at this point.
Right.
As far as the hardware is concerned, and I don't really trust that they're going to save your library. So like I think the libraries are up in kind of flux right now. I know some people will go, "Oh, well, maybe cloud or whatever." That's not saving your library to me, right? That's a nothing burger. Right? Like, I didn't buy these games in the cloud. I don't care about, I couldn't play them in the cloud if I wanted to. First of all, I don't have the internet for it. And second of all, that's a really shitty way to play games. But outside of that, and some people go, "Oh, well, maybe they'll put them all." I guarantee they're not going to put them on PC, right? Like, they can't just transfer your licenses to PC. They have first party stuff that can do that. But for somebody like me, I have 1,500 games installed, right? Very few of them are play anywhere, and I wouldn't want to play them on PC to begin with, right? I didn't buy my stuff on PC. I don't care about PC. I buy consoles. I like console gaming. So for me, what they've done essentially is Xbox is making the other platforms more attractive, because it's just like what you said, right? So there's going to be people that stick with Xbox, right? Those really like stubborn ones that have a big library, you know, and I have a big library, but I'm not stupid. I don't want to waste money, you know.
Yeah.
So they'll stick with Xbox though, right? They'll be there until Xbox stops the hardware altogether, and that's fine, you know. You like Game Pass, that's fine, you know. You'll be able to play the games or whatever for a cheaper price without buying them or whatever, rental service. Cool. That's not going to be very many people, because if we look at it, Game Pass has been around for 8 years. It's not growing on console at all. It finally grew a little bit, I guess, on the PC side thanks to Call of Duty, but it's not enough to draw people into the ecosystem, to be honest with you, from what we've seen, right? I mean, 8 years and it's 30 million, whatever it is, right? So it's not like it's like this huge deal. So basically, what you're going to notice is, say, PlayStation 6, you can play Xbox games, PlayStation games, and PlayStation gets more third-party games, right?
Yep.
So, you know, your Black Myth, Wukongs, all that kind of stuff. You're going to, like, that makes, Xbox essentially is making PlayStation more attractive. Same thing with Switch 2, right? You get Nintendo's games, which their first party is, like, unmatched, really.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to get the Xbox games, right?
Yeah.
And you can get it on the go or whatever. Microsoft is still supposedly years away from their handheld. Mm-hmm. So that makes that very attractive, right? Like they've essentially made their console the least attractive place to play games.
Yeah.
You know, Xbox games. And that's really kind of where we're at. Yeah. Yeah. The other thing is like there was a leak the beginning of last year. You remember this leak, Mooch? It was like a Discord leak, and this guy's like, he's like, oh, the Indiana Jones games, it's first person, but then it goes into third person, and it looks like Harrison Ford, but it's Troy Baker doing the voice acting.
Yeah.
And oh, look at this, all these games are going all the Bethesda stuff was exclusive, and now it's going multi-platform, and then, you know, that basically Microsoft's going third party. This whole leak ended up being true, right? And the things that he said was like, oh, it looks like Microsoft is going to go the OEM route, which is basically Steam machines.
Right.
Okay. It's like, I mean, that's not like what the average console gamer cares about, right? It's like, that's like this weird thing. Like for me, I don't want to, I don't care about that stuff. You know what I mean? So when you think about it from that way, I don't really think, and when you hear Satya Nadella talk, like he did his talk yesterday, and he's like, we're focusing on the things that make us money. And he mentions cloud or the positives, right? And the things that make us money. And he mentions PC, Game Pass growth, and he mentions cloud gaming hours or whatever, right? No mention of the console whatsoever, because again, it's down almost 30% year on year again. And so that doesn't look good. So it's sort of like, and people would bring this up to me all the time. Well, Microsoft doesn't, you know, there's the Surface, right? The Surface. You hear about that all the time, right?
Yep.
Nobody cares about the Surface. So today they did announce that they have new Surfaces coming out, but they're only going to be available through direct buying, right? And the guy who came up with this Discord stuff, these leaks, he's like, well, there's going to be, they're going to pull out of some territories. They're going to be available in less territories. Microsoft isn't going to advertise their next Xboxes at all, right? It's going to be for a very small percentage of the people. You know, you're going to have to probably get them right direct through Microsoft. They're not going to advertise them. You're not going to be able to go into a Walmart and get an Xbox. It's like, that's some conjecture on my part as well, but I don't think they're going to do that. Why would you go all out? There's not going to be any of that, you know? Like right now, we don't see any advertising for Xbox. We don't see anything like that. I don't think they're going to, you know, have any of that kind of stuff like what we're used to with it. There's not going to be some big marketing campaign. Unfortunately, you know, some people might go, well, what could be the hook? There is rumors, you know, some people say it might be dual boot or something. Most people mention Steam. I'm dubious on that because Microsoft like makes you pay to play online, and if you can access Steam through an Xbox, that means you wouldn't have to pay to play online. And also, Steam games are cheaper. You could just buy them through the Steam store, and Microsoft wouldn't get anything for third-party purchases or microtransactions. And the way these companies work are they sell you hardware at a subsidized rate, meaning they'll take a loss on the hardware because they'll get it back through subscription services, microtransactions, and software sales. But if it's not their store, how do they earn that stuff back, right? My thought process is if they are going to have another store in there, it might be the Windows Store, right? And their thought process could be, well, we won't have exclusives, but maybe, you know, the stuff that's PlayStation can be played on Windows. But even then, it's like, for console gamers, I have no interest in playing anything. You know, I don't want to mess with the PC store or anything like that. So I think it really takes a lot of the plug and play aspect out of it, and I don't think it's going to be a very big. I think probably Wii U type sales numbers somewhere in there.
I'll say this, because you know I hear crap talking like from the business side of like what's going on, and I hear that. For me, I look at a lot of this stuff from like the gamer. And more so like the Xbox hardcore gamer side, where it really is, in my opinion, sad to see Xbox go out like this in terms of the console itself and diminish and see the value of the console diminish so much. And what makes it so crazy is if you go back a year, 2 years, people were saying, or 3 years, people were trying to say that PlayStation needs to follow Microsoft. And I'm like, follow them where? Off a cliff? Fuck out, excuse me, my fault. Get out of here with that, yo. Like that's crazy. So like, you know, but from a console perspective, and as somebody, you know, I'm a dinosaur in gaming, so you know, I still care about the consoles, and I think console gaming is still something that's very important. It still has a place within the games industry and within gaming. It sucks to see that the Xbox console itself has been diminished so much to being really relegated down to secondary or even tertiary of something that's just not really as appealing to buy, because there really truly is no incentive to buy.
It's not good for gamers in general to not have competition.
Yeah,
exactly,
let's be real about it. Like nobody should be celebrating.
PlayStation is essentially going to have PlayStation is essentially going to have a high performance monopoly. Let's be honest. Because very soon you're not going to need an Xbox, so PlayStation is going to have free reign. like if you
PlayStation's are fucking up right now too, though.
They are, but not on the business side. Because the thing is, like, you know, this like perception of fucking up. I agree. Like, as enthusiast gamers, we know about the cancellations and stuff. But remember that the general public and Joe Schmo, he doesn't know about these are rumored games that are cancelled. Right? They're not publicly announced games. The only cancellation they know about is Concord, but every other game they don't know anything about it. The only thing they see is the games that are released and the games that they can buy. And we know from the charting performance, you know, I think in 2024, 10 console exclusives on PlayStation charted throughout the year, different months. 10, and year to date there was 2. None from Xbox or Nintendo last year. Sorry. So from the consumer perspective, they're not seeing a fuck up. They're just seeing a constant slew of games that they're interested in buying in, whether it's Astro Bot or Stellar Blade or Helldivers or, you know, Black Myth Wukong or whatever it is. It's just a constant deluge.
I mean, if you think about it, like PlayStation is going to be the only place where you can get, you know, like a Ghost of Tsushima, a Last of Us, Forza and Gran Turismo, Halo, Gears, and Uncharted, right? It's like realistic Spider-Man, Wolverine, and, you know, probably Fable, right? So it's like, I mean,
I was just going to speak on that. So the 2 points I was going to make is, if Forza Horizon is coming to PlayStation, that means Fable is, because Forza it's a custom engine, right? Forza Tech. So if they're already adept at working on this, proprietary engine for Forza, well, then you might as well do a Fable as well, because it's the same engine. And then the other thing I was going to say, Mooch, you mentioned a point about, you know, Call of Duty grew Game Pass. Now, you know, sort of like CEO speak. Sometimes it's more about what they don't say. It's the omissions, and you're reading between the lines, right? If you notice, Satya Nadella never actually said they have record Game Pass subscribers.
Right.
What he said was it's the highest number of single day signups or launch day signups, right? Which means that it's for that day that Call of Duty released, they had the most signups, right? But there is a possibility that actually Game Pass right now had a further decline, and even with the subscribers that Call of Duty added, it's still below the previously announced 34 million. And this is actually not the first time this has happened. So when Starfield released, he actually said the same thing.
Yep.
He said Starfield has led to the most Game Pass signups in a single day ever. But we know for a fact, not opinion, that they actually had overall Game Pass decline because the FTC leaked documents showed that between Game Pass and Xbox Live Gold, there was 37 million subscribers in 2022. And then in 2024, they announced 34 million after they combined Xbox Live Gold into Core, right? So that's a drop of 3 million. So even though Starfield led to the highest signups in a single day,
we say
overall,
this. We've been saying this for a long time, right, Nib? We've been saying you will see a spike, whether it be for what we saw with Call of Duty or with Starfield.
Yeah.
But then how long do people stay subscribed? They play the game, they play it to their heart's content, and then after that they cancel. And they never mention they're never going to mention the drop off.
Exactly. So here's the other thing, right? So it was a 2% content and services increase in revenue, right? But this is quite an interesting figure because one, they had what they themselves described as the biggest Call of Duty in engagement ever, right? We already know from the data that this Call of Duty sold a lot more than the previous two Call of Duties and the previous Call of Duty, right? Year on year, I think PlayStation was like 37% up on the previous Call of Duty, and Xbox and PC was down a little bit. Xbox was down significantly, but overall, this Call of Duty sold more, right? So really, their revenue should be more than the previous year, but obviously on PlayStation they lose a 30% cut, so you have to figure that in. But then you should have the addition of the new signups for Call of Duty, right? But here's the interesting thing about that. They increased the price by 20%, or 17 to 20% in September of 2024. So that means the new Game Pass signups alone should have contributed to a big increase in revenue, right? Content and services revenue, because we're talking about a 20% increase. And yet, with one of the biggest price increases they've ever had, and the biggest game they've ever had on the service, and the biggest selling Call of Duty they had in a number of years, still it's only 2% revenue growth, which tells me that one, the overall Game Pass number probably declined, and two, the loss of the sales on Xbox was significant. And I think that is why they didn't separate the ABK results this year as well. They didn't let us see what the impact to the
that's a great segue for the great David Faulkner. David, do you want to kind of get into, because Nib kind of set us up for what the Microsoft Gaming the fiscal year 25 quarter
Mooch,
two.
Can I just say one final thing, because I know
Nib.
the Xbox fanboys are going to come at me for this. I know that Satya Nadella said they had a 30% growth on PC. I am aware of that, right? But if you go back to the FTC documents, in 2022, I think it was like 20 or 20 something million of the subscribers was on console and the rest was on PC. So even if you have 30% increase in subscribers on PC, you can still easily have a total decline because the vast lion's share of subscribers is still console. Contrary to that LinkedIn leak, it wasn't accurate. We know from Microsoft data themselves that the majority is on console. So just keep that in mind.
That doesn't make it any better.
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. It's worse. It does make it worse. Yeah.
So I'll try and keep this brief because Mooch worded me up as soon as the stuff came out. He goes, "I need you on, but I don't want a TED talk for 3 hours."
Yeah,
so
I said, David. I said the secret to podcasting is take that 1 hour thought. I said that you were doing a TED talk, and I said you just reduce it down to about 5 to 10 minutes, and you've got a great podcast. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, so Nibs touched on a couple of things there. I'm going to brief over this because I don't want to get into too much of the nitty gritty, but the key things to take out of it is the financial performance is abysmal when you combine it with the comments out of the earnings call and then look at what's happened or is happening in and around that. As Nib said, highest number of engagements into the subscription service, content and subscriptions on launch day. They had 2 major games launch in that quarter. They said 4 million players for Indiana Jones. They didn't say how many were sold. And then you've got a 100 record number of hours on xCloud Gaming, 140 million hours or something of streamed content and all that. Those numbers are great when you're talking about players' engagements and all the rest of it, but it didn't translate into revenue. Their average revenue per user, monthly active users is now an irrelevant term. That's why PlayStation's not talking about them much anymore. It's why most of the others aren't talking. Monthly active users means nothing. It's average revenue per user is the key metric to going forward with engagement. The ARPU for Xbox is horrendous. They've got 7% decrease year on year in game sales. They've got barely any growth in their subscription service, but that's, talking about 30% uplift in the quarter for PC subscriptions. They had a massive increase in prices, multi-tier levels. You can't get day one at the base tier, so you've got to go to the next tier in most of their games. And then to come out at the end of that and say hardware's down over a third compared to last year, which was down over a third compared to the year before. You've got all this money that they've spent on getting games into Game Pass, and the thing's hardly shifted the dial. If anything, it's performing worse than it should be, because even the price increase should have cranked it up 7 or 8% in terms of revenue growth. And even the increase in numbers should have translated into something better than 2%. Coming out of the earnings call information, Amy Hood was pretty sure it was Amy Hood that said it. That the 2% growth in subscriptions and content was better than expected. So they were expecting nothing to happen out of this in their previous forecast. So obviously it's outperformed slightly, but the massive drop off in revenue is very concerning. If they have another quarter like this, then we're back to the start of 2021 where Satch saying, well, we're actually going to bother or not. I've got a couple of notes here I'll just quickly run through. Sorry.
No, let's hear them, David. I want to hear it. Yeah.
The focus in the earnings call. So the focus shifting from profitability, not growth. That's an interesting point to make. So they don't think they can grow it. They want to make it profitable. That means that Xbox as a unit needs to start standing on its own feet. Now that's got other implications around directly and indirectly attributed revenue and expenditure. Without going into the details, and I talk about this a lot on Twitter, the way that Xbox does their financials, and it's legitimate, it's allowed, what I'm about to say is perfectly fine under US GAAP reporting. What they directly generate in terms of revenue and what they directly incur in terms of costs are definitely in there. It's the stuff that is across the Microsoft organization where they start sharing stuff. So, your ads and your searching and all that sort of stuff. If it's originated from an Xbox area and then it translates out into, they clicked on the ad and the revenue comes in, that stuff gets split up, and it gets split up on a couple of different ways. It's either expenditures, usually headcount, revenue is usually on revenue generation points and a few other bits and pieces. But if this indirectly generated attributed revenue and expenditure starts to really shift because their revenue numbers start to decline or their expenditure numbers start to crank up, they could end up in a much worse position than what they currently are. And that's not great at all. If their directly attributed revenue and expenditure is upside down in a bad enough state, and it would be better for the shareholders to just not have it, that's a very real possibility. So when they go away from growth and go into profitability, the whole dynamic of this thing shifts. Daddy's wallet is not open anymore. They've got to stand on their own 2 feet. That's a scary thought. Something that's performing as poorly as it has in this last quarter. Again, the high player numbers, revenue went backwards. The selling games on PlayStation might get an accelerated perspective, but now they've got another problem. They're selling into platforms that have already got saturated, that are oversaturated in certain aspects, and they need to make sure that the quality is there. They can't have Redfall showing up on PlayStation and expect it to sell. They can't have that stuff happening. They will get drowned, like absolutely.
Well,
destroyed.
David, let me say this, because this was a point that was made a week ago on Twitter. I think it was from Forbes. I want to say Paul might have said it. Like, he said, how many times can you have a great game like an Indiana Jones, but then it's not being purchased and it's not being played, right? 4 million people stopped by. When first people heard 4 million people, that sounds like a lot, but that's actually not a lot. That's not 4 million purchases. That's 4 million people maybe hit download and played it. So how many more times can they take risks getting these titles, or getting these contracts in place with like Disney or a Lucasfilms or LucasArts, and have situations where the game doesn't sell and it's not moving Game Pass?
That's exactly the problem. That's the problem that a lot of us have highlighted since 2017, 2018, that they've gone on this massive buying spree. They've got these huge overhead costs in terms of these studios. And I know there's a thread on Twitter going around about, PlayStation needs to buy more studios because they've got to compete in terms of volumetric output with Microsoft, because Microsoft now as a publisher has got all these studios that are just going to crank out games. It doesn't matter if they're not getting money for it, if they can't sustain those studios. PlayStation's got no problems in shutting down a studio if it's not making money.
Yep.
No problems. And it's the same with a lot of the other major publishers. They will shut stuff down faster than you can blink if it's not making money. If Microsoft's Big Daddy Warbucks chest is run dry for Xbox, they haven't got that back funding. All of a sudden, the wells run dry. What are they going to do? You can't produce a game that's got 4 million players and is hardly sold. It's effectively not sold anything. If that thing doesn't perform when it hits PlayStation, that could be it. That could be it for the studio. It should be it for the studio if they can't continue to produce games that sell. That's the challenge that they're now moving into. So this whole notion of they'll be fine, they will dominate markets, they will do this and that as a publisher, that is absolute bullshit. They are up against other seasoned publishers who know what they're doing, they know what the quality requirements are, they understand what the market is doing, and it's a saturated market. And to be honest, probably the worst time they could have chosen to go and do this. If they can't sell the games, they will have to start shutting down some of these studios because they do not have the chest sitting there to pay for it. And that's just how it is. And especially, sorry, I'll just move on to one last thing to cap that off. When you read through their forecast and it's low single-digit growth numbers, and they have got nothing in there about expenditure reductions, but their whole focus of the Q&A in the call was around AI and Azure Cloud and Intelligent Cloud. They said they're going to crank up their investment in that area. They don't have a huge amount of money sitting in their bank account at the moment. They've got $17 billion sitting in the bank, available cash. That might sound like a huge number. They need about $15 billion. If you read their cash flow reports, they need about $15 billion a month just to operate. They're running lean in their available cash, and they're paying back debts that they borrowed over the last 5 years to be able to expand in a lot of these areas and buying these companies. They don't have a lot of spare cash sitting around burning a hole in their pocket, and some of the commentary suggests that they're not interested in buying more studios, that they need to focus their areas in Azure Intelligent Cloud and their AI offerings, because that's where the money's coming in from. They're not making any money out of gaming. Gaming didn't even get a question in the Q&A. It is so far down the totem pole now, it's ridiculous. Now, the comments made earlier, I can't remember who made them, sorry, on the panel, about the what's their laptop thing called?
Surface. Crap was talking about the Surface products. Yep.
Yeah, the Surface Pro and Windows OEM. Those things have got business lines that assist in their being there. They're offered to business to consumers as a buy point, and if they break even, that's fine. But the new Surface Pros aren't. They are going to be sold direct from Microsoft, but they're not being designed primarily for business to consumer. They're designed as to be a sweetener for their business to business engagements in trying to get businesses to sign up to Azure or re-sign to Azure and not go to a rival platform. Microsoft isn't leading in that anymore. They're running second or third in cloud infrastructure, intelligent cloud computing, and they're starting to really lose ground to Google in terms of their business offerings. So their main bread and butter winners are being threatened, and threatened pretty heavily. It's no wonder that they've gone back to pumping money into that. But that's Microsoft's problem. As a whole, Xbox is sitting right down the bottom of the totem pole at the moment, and it is floundering. And I've said this on a few podcasts before. The new chief operations officer at Microsoft, who was brought in specifically to get them back to performing at the top, will have absolutely no problems in putting a line through it and saying, get rid of it or shut it down. And they really are at risk with this commentary around we're shifting focus to profitability, not growth. It's when you combine that with the numbers and the performance, it does not look great.
No, I was going to give one final point of data, and again, CEOs say one thing to prop up the shareholders and the investors, and data is another thing, right? Which is from Microsoft themselves. And I know people are going to doom and gloom, but you want the data, right? You want the facts. So 2 interesting things about profitability. So Amy Hood actually said in.
Hey, He'll be right back, folks. That's what Nib's microphone cuts out sometimes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So Amy had said, "Yeah, could you hear?"
You have to start that over.
Yeah,
it's because I'm reading what she said, so I don't want to get it wrong. I've got the quote up, but yeah, I'm gonna have to paraphrase now. But they expected 3/4 of acquisition related costs to go on after they acquired them, totaling 2.2 billion, right, in losses. When in actuality, it was 4/4 of acquisition related costs, totaling 3.92 billion, right?
Oh god!
So we're already in the hole, an extra 2 billion more than they anticipated, right? And then here's the other thing. So we already know what ABK revenue was before they got acquired, right? So fiscal year, I think 21 or was it 22? They did 8.8 billion, and then I think the previous year was 7.7 or something like that. We know the year under Microsoft because they revealed the data was like, it's not a fiscal year, it's a calendar year, I believe. But anyway, I think based on the data that we have, matching it up, it's like under Microsoft, they're on 7.1 billion. So we're already off by like a billion there as well, right? So revenue is already dropped. And then the costs are much higher than you anticipate. And then now you have with the biggest game that's sold way better than the previous Call of Duty, you only have like a 2% content and increase services increase in revenue. But remember, you also had a big price drop and you had Indiana Jones and other games as well. So it's not adding up. And I think that is why they didn't reveal, because I really wanted to see the ABK revenue because I would know straight away how they're faring to how they did before they got acquired. And I actually think they're probably down quite a lot on where they were before they were acquired, which is why we have the data numbers that we have.
That we do have. That's right. Now, to get Jez in here, and no, Nib makes some great points, David as well. Jez, to get your take on this, of course, we started with Forza Horizon. We're talking about Microsoft's fiscal year 25 quarter 2. But like, if you take what Nib was just saying and what David was saying, you look at it, we mentioned that Halo didn't move the numbers, Starfield didn't move the numbers for Game Pass, Indiana Jones didn't move the numbers. These are big, listen, they're big names. I don't care how you look at it. I don't care if you like the games or you didn't. They're big games, Jez. They didn't move the needle for Game Pass. Here's my question. You can comment on Forza and what you want to say, but my question to you, to just kind of move on to another subject as well, is MLB The Show 25 not in Game Pass. So I know the contract's up, but not renewed. And the reason probably being is everything David and Nib just said. If they're losing certain funding, especially in certain categories that they thought they would start to be stepping on the gas now, are we also at the point where we're not going to see big third party deals go into Game Pass day and date? Those days are probably gone as well.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, so I was listening. I would say the thing is like, even I was surprised looking at the financials of how small of amount of an impact that Call of Duty had going in Game Pass. That was a big announcement. Phil made a big choice in that he was on Ryan McCaffrey's show. It was Links. He was over there and he told them that, I'd make
Black Ops 6 day one Game Pass. Black Ops 6.
He was hyping it. Yeah, he was all excited, and the fact that it didn't yield that much. My thing is that I feel moving forward, I'm not sure how much, like how many other franchises or games they have in their arsenal that has the impact of Call of Duty. They do have Call of Duty every year, but I was just surprised of how little it impacted their financials, because that was the $80 billion bet that they did, and also putting that game, the game that traditionally sells all over the place, putting it in Game Pass was pretty disruptive, in the sense of doing that. That was a big gamble. So moving forward, I'm not sure how much franchises, like I don't know, like if Avowed, I know Avowed, even Doom, to that, like, nothing's the level of Call of Duty in there. So they do have it though every year, so maybe it gets better, but this was one of the better Call of Duties. So again, that was another thing. This was one of the better Call of Duties. Like, I would say, okay, I can understand if it was Modern Warfare 3, that DLC, $70, but it wasn't. This was actually a full-fledged Call of Duty. This was a really good one in the sense, full campaign, zombies and everything with multiplayer. So this was kind of like their best foot forward with this Call of Duty, and that's all it did. That was my big surprise looking at those financials. And I think things are changing, too, with the pulling out of MLB. I don't know if that was contract related or Sony just going, I think we've kind of made our waves. Like we We got them all excited. You know, we got that attracted that crowd, let a lot of people play them, and now like we yank it from there. Now we let everybody buy it. I don't know if that was a contract deal or if it was a strategic deal and just pulling it out of Game Pass. But the one thing though with the third party deals, like that's the thing, like it's always been a challenge for them to get these big third parties. One of the things that I thought was a great move was the Ninja Gaiden 4 thing. Like apparently that was Phil's baby. Phil decided, went over there. He made platinum, joined with Koei Tecmo and create this game.
Yeah.
Like, and guess what? He didn't need to dress in a suit. There was no CMA involved. There was no goddamn what's he wearing today. There was no Lulu. There was no Lulu. There was nobody grabbing ass in the bed. There was nothing. It was just he went over there. He got a goddamn game and a franchise. And I think if that's what you could have done, why weren't you doing that all these years? Like, why were we dealing with
it? Really, listen. We, Jazz. I know you've said it on your show,
just
but
bring the games.
We've all talked about this. Persona. Nib, Crap has mentioned this. We've talked about it on this show. We talked about it at MNC years ago. That's why when people argue, well, Sony and Nintendo are going to go this way. If the formula that works is not broken, why are you trying to fix it? Microsoft had a really good thing going after the 360, right? And they kind of did shoot themselves in the foot a bit with the whole Xbox One launch. But they were starting to gain.
Never recovered.
I don't. Yeah, and Jazz, that may be the case.
Well,
but
no. Here's the thing, though, right? Like,
what do you think, Crap? I think
we say they didn't recover, but they sold almost 60 million Xbox Ones. That's probably more than a lot of people thought,
right?
And that's why and the Series X and S won't sniff that. So how do you end up screwing up worse with these newer ones than the consoles that literally tried to force $100 Connect on us? Have DRM, no used games, all that kind of stuff, right? Like how outraged everybody was at that point. How do you do worse than that? That needs to be studied.
I didn't want to give. They launched this whole generation without a launch lineup. Like that's what I said. Like all that bullshit that they did with the Xbox One. At least they had Rise. They had Dead Rising. They had Titanfall. Like they had games that kind of like was like okay, whatever this bullshit like check in.
I agree with you, right? That's the games because Microsoft launched good games and had games for the first few number of years. But if you're like Phil Spencer's been in charge of Xbox since 2014, how do you, when you're planning a next Xbox, you plan your software pipeline? How do you not have anything fucking planned for the launch of your new console, right? And people go, oh well, Halo was supposed to be there. Listen, we now know that Halo, when they showed that original trailer, there was no game there. That was just bullshit trailer, like because that studio didn't have a.
You mean the Space one, yeah?
Yeah, they didn't have a game at that point, right? They really didn't start. Yeah, they didn't start making that game until like 2018, 2019, whatever it was. It was like, that was when they started making it. That's why it wasn't there. So why didn't you have stuff ready to go? Like you launched a game console with no games, and then people wonder, and you'll still hear people go, well, exclusives don't sell consoles or whatever, which is like, I guess we'll find out.
That's BS too, though, because that's BS too, because if that was the case, go back to last year, the year before, or even just the ABK deal, or even the ZeniMax deal. There was the big fuss around what will and will not go to PlayStation or competing platforms.
Yeah,
and you had a lot of people saying, oh, Starfield shouldn't be there or won't be there, it should be exclusive. You don't spend $9 billion or this amount of money to just put things on other platforms. It was all these talking points. And even now, when you look at the multitude of interviews that Phil Spencer has had over the last year or two, one of the main focal points of these interviews has been exclusivity, because people care about that stuff, right? You don't hype up Activision being acquired and then say, I'm happy it's acquired because now they make more money. No, you're happy it's acquired because there's a level of exclusivity that you can now expect or hope to see with such an acquisition. The fact that isn't happening or has not happened, and we're seeing them, again, no red lines that are bringing down the walls. It for a lot of the people that were championing this stuff, it's frustrating. They won't admit it, but you see it through their actions. And you see it through the questions that's continuously asked and wondered. It's frustrating because exclusives, they care about that stuff.
Absolutely.
I actually think like I honestly think like the marketing that they did. This is an Xbox. Like, I'll just give you one.
Nib will be right back.
There he goes.
Wait, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Yeah, I was just going to give one data point that kind of points to how kind of, and I know we're so doom and gloom about Xbox, but again, it's just a data. I can't help it. So John Welfare, he's been estimating Xbox sales for the better part of 2 decades, right? So he put out this thing. He was saying the estimated Xbox sales, Series XS sales in the United States for the 2024 is 2.7 million, right? But that is really important because he's saying that is the lowest that an Xbox console has ever sold in the United States since they entered gaming. So he went back, and even the original Xbox was hitting just shy of 3 million at its lowest. And even Xbox One was still holding 2.93 million. And then the Series X did 2.7. So it's actually literally done lower than the lowest year of any Xbox in history. And he was saying besides 3 years, and those 3 years were because there was production issues and something to do with COVID. So he was like, outside of those, every other year, it's literally the worst selling Xbox year of all time. Crazy.
Well, they had no bundles. They didn't do really anything. They usually love their bundles. Their family bundles.
They don't care. Look, you guys, they don't care about the hardware. I know people will harp on the fact that they keep mentioning they'll do another one, but I mean, like I said, they do Surface still, but again, they're not really supporting that. It's just like they're gonna, because you know what? I think Microsoft doesn't want the bad press right now to end. The hardware, because it would be really bad for them. So they go, okay, well, we're going to have something. But the thing is like, if they're not really all in on it, why would third-party devs be all in on it? And I think that's probably going to be the tough thing going forward. Like for me, when I'm looking at this or whatever, it's like, you're second-class citizen, second-class gamer if you're an Xbox gamer, because first of all, these games like Forza Horizon 5, for instance, is going to have haptic support. We don't even have a haptic controller because Microsoft was going to come out with one, and they kind of canceled it or postponed it or whatever, right? Like that goes to, like, I always gauge that as like how interested they are in hardware. Think about this for a second, you guys. Remember the FTC leaks? They come out. Xbox Brooklyn was going to be a rounded, like spherical Series X. It looked kind of cool. It was going to have some upgrades like the Wi-Fi and some internal upgrades.
Yeah, we saw that during the FTC trial.
But yeah, at least it was going to have like a slate, like they put some effort into a new design and look kind of cool. And then, they were going to do like a slight redesign on the Series S as well. And they were going to come with the new Sibyl controller that was going to have haptics and things, right? Cool. That was going to be cool. And they canceled that stuff, right? I mean, that should be your first clue. And what did they give us instead? They spray painted the Series X white and caulked in the disk drive, and then slapped a little bit bigger hard drive in the Series S and X, and and called it a day. So that should tell you everything you need to know about how they feel about their hardware. It's not important to them. And when you look at what Satya Nadella says, he says, and I quote, "We're focused on improving the profitability of the business in order to position it for long-term growth, driven by higher margin content and platform services, and we're delivering on this plan now." So basically, they're kind of, and the things that he talked about. Yeah, he says, we see strong momentum for Xbox Cloud Gaming with a record 140 million hours streamed. Game Pass set a new quarterly record for revenue and grew its PC subscriber base by over 30% as we focused on driving fully paid subscribers. They don't mention anything hardware related ever anymore, right? It's just basically, this. And the thing with the cloud thing is so bogus because what they've done is they've tied, if you have the Xbox app, you get points if you play on the cloud thing for like 10 minutes or whatever. So a lot of people do that. I don't like, isn't this influx of people all of a sudden playing cloud gaming, because cloud gaming sucks. But it's like, even I've messed around with it a little bit to get the points. It's just like, you just let something run on the
but
cloud on your phone for a few minutes, and then you get the.
You're saying that about the hardware. This is one of the reasons. I don't know if you saw the interview he did with I think it was it Destin Ligari or whatever. Basically, he was asked. No, maybe it was Paris who asked him the question. Paris, Lily. he asked him, people are saying like, why would you buy an Xbox now, right? If everything's going to PlayStation, like, what is the reason? And Phil's response was, it's the hardware. People will buy it from the hardware and the innovation in the hardware.
That's right.
One
that
thing,
was the answer,
it is funny because the other two CEOs said the complete opposite. And I made a tweet about this. Nintendo and Nishino, they said it's all about the content. Phil's saying it's all about the hardware. So that already is a big dichotomy between the two. But yeah, he says hardware innovation. But it's like, let's just be honest. Like if we're talking hardware innovation, Nintendo is a hybrid console. It's quite innovative. You can dock, you can take it portably. And then on the high performance console side, what are people going to buy Xbox? What for the quick resume thing? Or on the PlayStation side, you've got the DualSense, you've got haptics, you've got the adaptive triggers, you've got VR2, you've got the portal. So I'm thinking like if it really is down to innovation, and then you've got the Pro as well, I would think that there's probably more from the consumer standpoint.
Nib will be right back.
Oh shit! Did I cut out again?
It always cuts out. You have about 5 minutes to talk, and then it cuts out. I don't know why.
I would assume that consumers would see more innovation on the hardware side, on the PlayStation side, than they would Xbox. So that answer was a bit odd to me because it's like, again, between VR2 Portal and Pro and everything like that, I feel like hardware innovation wise and the DualSense and even little things like the steering wheel that they have for GT7 with the haptics in the wheel and stuff, like more hardware innovation is going on over there. So I just thought that was an interesting
Well, I think he was alluding to a PC probably. He doesn't want to say go buy go build a PC. That's what
but the answer was specifically for the Xbox console. Why would we still buy
and that brings me back to my original point too, was like Forza Horizon 5 with the haptics and it's probably and the PS5 Pro support. They're making games that are gonna play and look better on other consoles, which is again that comes back to us feeling like second class citizens. It really, to me, if you go back, you guys remember back on the Xbox One days, Mooch, where they had a parity clause for indie games, right? Which was the indie games had to come out stand date on Xbox, or they had to have extra content on Xbox.
Extra content.
And the whole reason was that he wanted Xbox fans to feel like first class gamers. And it's like now we don't, you know what I'm saying? And I get like everybody's like, and you see a lot of people, and I'm not attacking anybody in particular, but they'll go, well, look at this. Now you can play it on your phone, your smartwatch, you're this, you're that. It's like, man, I heard this stuff in 2016 when people started talking about this, and I was like, listen, man, I do not feel like playing this stuff when I'm taking a shit. I don't care about that. I want to play my console on my big TV and relax. You know what I mean? Like, I am not the type of guy who games on the go or any, like, I'm not a mobile gamer. That's just not me. I'm a console, like, and I think most people are like that. Like, you see some people online on the internet or whatever that'll be like, yeah, I like to do this or that, but most of us don't. We just play on our consoles or PCs or whatever, and that's basically it, because there's separate games to play if you're a mobile gamer, stuff designed for that. Like, I don't think, there's, I just don't think every game is designed to be on a little touch screen or whatever the case may be. I feel like it's disingenuous what Microsoft is kind of doing, and they're trying to, it's a one-way street that's really bad in my opinion for Xbox fans.
Yeah, but
it really kind of allows Sony to do whatever they want.
The response to that, and this is, I hate to bring this up, Mooch, but because we're on this topic and this conversation, this goes back to you remember the Game Pass conversations that was constantly being had 3, 4, 5 years ago, and how the conversation of, well, you're getting it. People were thinking, well, with Game Pass, I'm getting these games for free,
right?
So I hear what Crap is saying, and I agree, right? Part of it has to do with what I think it was Nib or David, I forgot who said it, but they were talking about how when it comes to innovations within the console space, Microsoft is not really keeping up with PlayStation or even Nintendo with the accessibility of it all, but more so PlayStation when it comes to the innovation of trying to provide the best console-like experience. On top of that, you're getting the games in a subsidized service. Do you really have room to complain? That's I believe that's their thinking.
Yeah.
you have no room to complain because you are getting it for a subsidized price.
You got what you paid for.
It releasing on PlayStation or Nintendo, where it's not releasing in a service. They're going to put their best foot forward because they're trying to sell the product there.
Yeah.
These are the conversations and the things that I, myself, Mooch, Barry, whoever, tons of people were saying when it comes to subscription-based gaming. You have no room to complain. You have no room to expect more than what you get because you're getting it for a subsidized price.
Yep.
And even when you look now at the conversation of these games going to other competing platforms, even though they are going to other competing platforms, what are you seeing people say in response or in retaliation? Well, you're paying full price while I play for free.
I play for free or paying,
whatever.
That's right.
So the mindset has shifted, and so for the few within the Xbox space who want that quality, who want that next gen feel, who want the best of the best, you're not going to get that because unfortunately you're getting the game for free.
You're getting it for a subsidized price.
For lack of a better term, you're getting it for free.
That's
so you're going to take what you like and accept it.
That's the issue.
I want one of the things that I thought was strange when he was talking about the benefit of the console and going into cross saves and your save will go with you, like he's and play anywhere and stuff like that, and it's like buy once and play other places, and there's a lot of different caveats right now to it. Like maybe that's the vision that they have moving, like, years from now. They're moving at a snail's pace now. Like a lot of their stuff, like if you buy a game, Play Anywhere only works in the Windows Store. It doesn't work on Steam, and it doesn't work on a cloud. There's only 50 games right now, buy and stream. People have libraries of 350 games. I know Crap says I got a library of like 350 games. Like, are those going with me when I go to these other devices? And when you play Forza on a Switch and you're like, oh, you're part of the community. It's like, but does your save go with you? No, because you gotta you have cross saves with the PlayStation? Are you doing that? There's a lot of caveats to this vision of like and again, I don't understand. That's the benefit of owning a console. I'm going to buy your console. When you buy with us, you guarantee your save goes with you. And it's like, not really, because if you go to other devices, it's not cloud. It's not compatible Play Anywhere. There's so many different caveats. And I'm in shock that they were bringing back Play Anywhere when that thing was announced in 2017. Quantum Break was the first Play Anywhere game where they gave you a code.
Yep,
I remember they delayed the code like over a week or two when I was waiting for my PC version of it. And now they're trying to bring it back. Like how many
You want to know what's funny? Anywhere? Hey, you want to hear something funny? So in 2024, only 7% of games were Play Anywhere on Xbox. Right?
Yeah.
The lowest, the most amount they've ever gotten was 87%. So 13%, in 2023 were Play Anywhere. Out of all the games released, 13% in 2023 were Play Anywhere, and that's the most in any year that it's happened. Most of the time, it's 90 games too. Yeah. Most of the time, it's not. It's 90 plus that aren't. 90+% aren't Play Anywhere. So, yeah, it's really a bad situation that Microsoft finds themselves in. And going back to Phil Spencer's comments about, well, we want hardware or whatever. They had the most powerful hardware with the One X and the Series X. They did backwards compatibility. They did auto HDR, quick resume, smart delivery. They had VRR on the Xbox One X. 4K capabilities.
Saved it from the performance issue.
Yeah.
Frame rate drops and stuff.
And 4K capabilities. They had a lot of stuff. Realistically, that set them apart and set them ahead of what PlayStation was doing, but nobody cared. And the reason why nobody cared was because they didn't have exclusive games.
That's it,
right?
But the thing is
exactly.
They have this vision, and these are cool. Like I would love to buy once and play everywhere, and these are great, but they just move at a snail's pace that there's so many caveats. Like it's not where you want to be, and it's not as easy as he's making it seem to be. Maybe in this future of 10 years from now they're going to do it, but they got a lot of work to do. They get the interface of the Xbox app still is horrible after years of having it this way.
They won't have a console in 10 years, though.
I don't know what they're going to have in 10 years. And I feel like a lot of the stuff that they're doing now is definitely to save their investments in what they made, those $80 billion, because I think right now they realize like they're back up against the wall in the sense that, what their console is not driving it, their platform Xbox is not growing. The Game Pass, it's growing on PC, but guess what? PC is still the cheapest place to play at $11. That's the best deal right there.
Yeah, it is.
And the cloud, he said under oath during the ABK trial that a lot of people use cloud to sample the game before downloading it. And actually playing Gears on a phone, there's a lot of caveats to that. People don't want to play console games on a phone.
Did you hear what I said earlier? You get a lot of people. You get points. Yeah, you get points on the Xbox app by loading up a cloud game for 10 minutes or whatever.
There's more incentive there. Yeah, so it's just there's just so many different they're trying to do so many things, but they're not mastering them and getting the complete picture. And this is what they kind of do. They have these aspirations. I feel like they have this end game where we're going to be this publisher. When you buy with us, you can play anywhere you want on any device, and we get all the money from that. And basically this image of Minecraft remastered. Like they want their whole company to be Minecraft. Like it's just everywhere. We don't have to do anything. It's just
well, that's it. They want to set it and forget it, And I mean that's the thing. That
what the funny thing is though,
but they couldn't.
Is if they had the amount of sales of consoles that PlayStation has, they probably wouldn't be doing this stuff, right? Because if you look at it, people are like, did you guys see like 65% of their sales were with PlayStation?
Yeah.
Right? And that's Call of Duty. Let's make no mistake, that's Call of Duty. That's almost 100% Call of Duty.
That's the best you're gonna see, I think.
I mean, that's another thing. Not every game is Call of Duty. Listen, Forza Horizon 5 will do well. That's the best. That's like the best racing game there is. So I mean, and that game's
like that.
Yeah, that game's also perpetually in the top 15 on Xbox since it released. So for 4 years, that game's been in the top 15 on Xbox. So yes, that game's going to do well. Halo will probably do well. Gears of War will probably do well. But a lot of this other stuff, South of Midnight's not going to do well on PlayStation. Hellblade 2 is not going to do well on PlayStation. And it's because, there's certain games that are set up to do very, very well. And there's certain games that are just kind of average or, probably won't do well. Like, I think Indiana Jones is the best game Xbox put out in a decade, but, hardly anybody played it. 4 million people, and only 10% of those actually beat it, which is 400. That means 400,000. Yeah, 400,000 people beat that game. Could you imagine a game rated that high, like The Last of Us or whatever, and only 400,000 people beating it? Like, that to me is crazy. It's such a good game.
Yeah.
But I think what happens is you see stuff in Game Pass, and it almost, I don't want to say makes it look cheaper, I guess, or less appealing or something. I don't know. I have that issue with free-to-play games too, and I've had that for a long time where I don't necessarily put in a lot of time with free-to-play games because...
That's because you're not putting, there is no, when you don't put any type of true money or investment into something, you're not going to truly invest in the game.
That's right.
Now, that doesn't happen with everybody, but when you have all this plethora of games that are released into Game Pass, there's no incentive for a lot of people to really want to play the game or try to or finish the game or whatever.
Persona, the number one thing is I'll get to it when I get to it.
Yeah. Or people try it for 10 minutes or whatever. There's so much stuff. It's like Netflix, People will watch something for 20 minutes to see if they like it. If they don't, they'll go on to the next thing.
And that's what we said here for a while, Crap, was we were talking about the quality. You've seen the quality just kind of diminish. And I know a lot of people are going to go, what about Indiana Jones? I like how everybody goes right to okay, fine. Indiana Jones, the quality was there. But Redfall, like Starfield, they were Halo Infinite, just an empty world you were running around in. You know what I mean? And then people are like, oh, Mooch, you remember Crap, they were on the show. And they were like, don't worry, they're going to fill it in. It'll do decently. I think Gears of War is the one that'll do the best on PlayStation, personally.
Yeah. I mean, look, but they'll eventually run out of these games.
You think Halo, Persona? Yeah. I think it's going to be Gears that absolutely crushes it. I don't know why.
I think Halo.
The only thing is, people can fly. I wasn't too excited about that announcement because they made the worst Gears Judgment.
Hold on. Did you know they also co-developed Gears 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, I saw that. So kind of gave me some hope.
Yeah.
That
Now here's the thing. They did the multiplayer of Gears Judgment, but the reason why they made it different was because Gears 3 was still active, and they wanted something that was different, so they didn't compete with themselves.
Some from Bulletstorm.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the story. I liked the story. Yeah. I actually like the fact that they were helping because they helped co-develop 1 through 3, which were obviously way better.
Mm-hmm. I actually think they have
the story. The gameplay was like that arcade type from Bulletstorm they pulled from.
Yeah,
it's good that they're working because they got pissed off. Remember, they were the ones that responded about they were having issues with I think Square Enix with the
Outriders, which was a decent game.
The gameplay stuff. Remember that?
Yeah, they didn't get paid. They're they got a raw deal.
The one thing that worries me about going back to these original Gears and original Halos games when they come out on PlayStation is remember the good old days of multiplayer online when you could get away with saying so much crap, and now we'll get reported and banned and thrown off.
They not only that, they AI monitor you.
I don't think you can.
It's kind of having multiplayer.
Yeah, but I don't think they're having multiplayer come to PlayStation. From what I heard, is that true?
I don't think crazy. I heard. Yeah, what I read was that there was rumors that the collection was not. It was going to be like how Uncharted had their collection where they didn't have multiplayer.
No multiplayer. Right. No multiplayer.
What good is Halo without the multiplayer?
So
well, I don't know.
Halo without multiplayer is completely pointless.
No, I disagree. I think if they do Halo, no, they definitely because they brought
it. Master Chief Collection. Wait,
Persona, you think they're gonna
because the games that they brought, the 4 games, the 2 that Grounded and Sea of Thieves, those are crossplay with Xbox and has the multiplayer and all that. So I don't see them bringing Halo. I don't see PlayStation saying no, don't bring Halo or don't bring the multiplayer.
No, they're bringing the multiplayer.
Hey, by the way, so in case people were wondering, Sony
collection's awesome.
Sony made about $100 million off of Microsoft games that over December, right, or whatever it was. Like Microsoft was the #1 publisher, whatever. The amount of money they made, it means that Sony made almost $100 million just by having Xbox games on there.
Yeah.
And so, like, what Sony will do, they'll reinvest those games into more games, like exclusive games and stuff. So,
it's
again,
money for nothing.
Yeah, it's like Microsoft essentially helps Sony earn money to make exclusives and keep games off of Xbox. It's so weird to me.
Yeah, but Microsoft has already
like how they were like the enemy, and it was like their market share was so high. Let us compete. Let us buy Activision to compete with them and to see where they are.
That's
now,
a good point.
That they need them.
Yeah,
let us compete.
Let us compete.
Yeah, but that was all. Just like theatrics, in order to get
because
get the revenue and all that stuff.
That's right.
Like what's funny, Persona.
It's more about growing Game Pass.
What was funny was they were talking about not trusting Microsoft with dev kits when apparently they already had dev kits for Sea of Thieves because that game took a year to port, and so when they were talking about that, they were like,
he's like, I'm out of here.
Well, no, I think when you look at when you see and we have to look at I want to say from Gamescom last year onward, you see a shift in Phil Spencer's talking and a shift in his messaging to where I don't want to say it's a defeatist mindset, necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily a defeatist mindset. I think it's more so a subtle like we're competing, but we're not competing with PlayStation. We're not competing with Nintendo. They're more so, and even when you look at the interview with Destin, when he's talking about, strengthening Xbox or Microsoft, Xbox, which is weird because, when I think Xbox, I think console, but Xbox is obviously, they're talking Game Pass and all of that. It's more so about just having more money coming into Microsoft.
So make a good point. If you go back, and I was watching the interviews, I had him. I did a show. I had too much Phil Ness for one show. I had to take a sabbatical after that. But if you go back and watch when they bought Bethesda, and you watch his energy, like his interviews and stuff leading up to Starfield, not right after Redfall, I think that hurt him, but like right like leading up to Starfield, he was like very confident. You could tell like ever since that podcast from last year, that February one, he's definitely been very just kind of like, it seems like somebody just gave him a script and said, this is what you go say and figure out how you're going to twist it or turn it. And you can see he's sort of just like, I don't think he wants this. I think he fought for exclusivity. I think he wanted to do that stuff, but I think the money just got too much, and the people.
This is I think with ZeniMax, I agree. I think with ZeniMax, that acquisition, I do think that they were still thinking having things exclusive and putting it in Game Pass and only having it on Xbox and PC, because even when you look when he was talking to Todd Howard and I forgot the other guy's name, but when he was talking with them, Pete Hines at the time, things were going to be case by case, right? And things that were already there would existing games would obviously still be supported and whatnot, but future games would be case by case. So I think there was still a thinking of, okay, we can still do exclusivity and grow Game Pass and do all these other things, because the investment, although it's 8 or 9 billion, it's not double digit or even triple digit numbers of investing, and we'll still be able to sustain, even though Microsoft Xbox gaming isn't necessarily profitable. When you fast forward,
when he said, "I want to make."
David,
when you fast forward now to the most recent acquisition with Activision, the amount of money that was put into that's not Xbox money, that's Microsoft money. So when you're doing that and you have that large of a investment that you're putting into it, you can't do exclusives, which is why it's strange that like people keep talking about like, oh yeah, next they need to get Ubisoft or they need to get Take-Two, and it doesn't make any sense to me that people are even still having those conversations.
Yeah, that conversation is pretty much
the
dead.
Downfall. When you look at the downfall of just everything that Microsoft has tried to build up and has failed and crumbled, why would you want them to buy anything else when we know it's going to still release on the competing platforms? Because remember, the arguments was, oh yeah, Microsoft, PlayStation keeps money hiding this and money hiding that. And it's like, okay, so they acquire all of this just to still put it where the problem you said was happening.
To play devil's advocate, though, I think they just want the games on Game Pass. That's what it is.
No, that's definitely the argument.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the thing that people and again, I don't want to bring it to that, but just to say this real quick, Game Pass takes the power of the consumer. It takes power away from the consumer. Because you don't have room to complain. You don't have room to really set any level of expectations, because the investment that you're putting into this is so minimal that you really
because even when you
I hate to say this, but your voice really does not matter. And that's why like I don't want PlayStation or Nintendo. I don't want anybody putting shit into Game Pass or putting shit into a service day and date. No, I buy the games that I like.
That's right.
And people should buy the games that they like.
Because even people that are critical on the Xbox side, the minute they're critical of the game for its quality, you'll hear somebody immediately tweet right back to them, what did you want for $20, dude? It's not costing you any more money. And that's the thing. So you do take a little bit of that power away from the consumer. David, I wanted to let you say something and also welcome Brat. But David, I know you have to leave. Did you have a comment before you had to take off, David?
I could go on for hours on this.
Well, naturally.
No, there's just a couple of things. Like, I think, again, and I'd be interested to know if Persona's going to pay out on the bets. I think we've touched on 6 of the 10 subjects. I would have bet 1, but we've managed to get across a few. The some of the stuff that's been brought up in the last 15, 20 minutes, I think, is quite critical to note that Bill is making comments that are contrary to what Amy Hood and Satcher are saying in their investor calls, and he's making things that conflict from conversation to conversation, with Destin and Paris and the meetings that or the interviews he's having. And this was one of the talking points we've brushed on it. They keep saying that it must be able to get on Game Pass, or a game has to be able to run on the Series S, and they're turning third parties away because of that requirement. And it's not that they're turning them away, like a third party's coming up and saying, I should rephrase that. It's not just that they're turning away when a third party comes up and says, can I have an exemption for putting this on the Series S? We don't see any value in doing this. And Xbox goes, no, you must do it if you want to put it on our platform. So the third party goes, well, stick it. I don't need that minimal margin that I may get from putting it on Game Pass if I get anything because of what's in there, or who's going to buy it. Or you get things like with Phantom Blade Zero coming, and you've got Wukong, Black Myth Wukong has just happened, and others. They're not interested in investing the time or the pain to go through to try and get it on that platform on day one. So they'll go, well, I'll just bang it out on PC and PlayStation and maybe Nintendo, depending on what's coming. And Xbox can just suck it up. And they're missing out on third-party games in that respect. And Phil's standing there even this week saying that the Series S requirements will stay in place. The only reason they have got Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox is because he relented on that one point. That's the only reason it's on there. Could you imagine if he dug his heels in on that? And the continuation of this issue, it's like they're not learning from what publishers and developers and the broader public are telling them. If he's not learning his mistakes, he's going to keep making them.
But a lot of devs also don't want their games in those servers going day one.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't want that, man. Like, because as much as you see like some of these developers, it's small developers. Yeah, you know, Game Pass helped us, blah, blah, blah. Those types of stories are few and far in between. And again, a developer that's putting 300 million, 200 million, 150 million, 100 million into making a game, they're gonna want the return. And people say, well, Microsoft will just pay whatever the difference is on that. And I'm like, bro, again, you people do not understand how this stuff works. They're not gonna keep paying for shit, especially if the subscription numbers are not growing at a rate that they want. It's crazy. It's crazy.
I thought his responses to that thing was disingenuous in the sense, like, you know, people don't develop for these handheld PCs. Like, they are just PCs with different APUs in them that they take PC games and people scale them down to run at that TDP.
Yeah.
Like, he's talking about like, oh, it's great that we target the S because that'll help it run on these handheld PCs. And it's like, nobody's building to the handheld PC spec unless there's like their PC games at a scale down. And I watch billions of videos of like, what is the best settings to get this game to run on my handheld PC? And it's like, you know, that's that the developer's not helping me. They didn't develop to that spec. Like, I do think Steam is great with its Steam Deck certification to kind of let you know that it's good to run on it, but that doesn't mean that the games are built for that spec. So him talking about like, it made no sense. Like, if you're building to a closed system with the S and it doesn't have all the features of the X, like it doesn't have performance modes. You know, a lot of them skip. And nobody's building. It's a PC. These handheld. It's a market that's that's there, but it's not a spec that people are
individual
building for.
Yeah, it's not an individual SKU.
So it's I thought they just messed up that how he was like, it makes it easier to port it to that. It made no sense. I don't know, man.
Yeah, you know, with Phil Spencer, I'm good. Yeah, go on. Sorry. You go, David.
No, you're right. Sorry, I got to jump off in like a minute, so I'm gonna inject myself here. Sorry, Nib. Grant me some leave on this one. That comments about the Series S and that Phil's just not learning because, as Persona said before, where the Game Pass is heavily subsidized, but it's subsidized from somewhere. And if Big Daddy's wallet is no longer open to subsidize it, and it's got to stand on its own 2 feet, well, the subsidy disappears. All these people that were proclaiming for years that we play it free on Game Pass because we stacked all these $1 deals. This is the consequence that we told you would happen years and years ago. This was going to be the outcome. It's got to be paid for by someone, and now Dad's not paying for it anymore. So what's Phil got to do? Phil can't figure out how to pay for it, so he's either going to have to shut it down, cut it loose, or he's going to have to make people pay for it.
Got to jack the price up.
The other problem, they crank the price up. They need people to pay for it. They're still not paying for it, and there's people still proclaiming that we got it for free and we're not paying it. Great. Good for you. You're probably directly resulting in killing off. You've seen the performance on the console sales, and you've seen how many games aren't coming to Xbox and the quality of the games that are there. What did you expect? We warned you, and I don't mean me and Nib and everyone else on this panel. We, as collectively gamers, warned you idiots about this. Now, with the subsidy gone, they've got to go and talking about what's potentially next for the console. Well, if it's not getting subsidized anymore, they've got to go and compete. Bill and whoever the hell is now in charge of their hardware division, I think is it the Wizard?
Sarah Bond.
So whoever's in charge of that, now they've got no hardware team, and it's relying on, and it's been bundled in with the OEM crew who are doing the Surface.
Oh, Jason Ronald. That's who it is.
Jason Ronald. They've now got to go and compete internally with Microsoft of project funding with the same against the departments that are now needing that massive capital injection for R&D and for the development cost. They're now having to compete against the big breadwinners in Microsoft. They've got to compete against the demands for AI investment, Azure investment, intelligent cloud investment, and all the rest of it that's going on. You read through those transcripts, you can see where Amy and Satya are focusing their investments on. It has nothing to do with gaming or gaming hardware. So they're scaling back on the Surface Pro investments anyway, because they're just going to be used as a sweetening deal, as I mentioned before. If the subsidy is dried up, the well is gone, they've got to do some pretty serious soul searching. There's a couple of things that I would like to know is they're just more for thought than answering. How, with all these issues in place about third parties and indies not getting their share because this well's dried up on Game Pass revenues and they don't want to go near it, how much of those didn't show up at the start for the Xbox Series S and X that could have helped them out at launch by having plenty of content on there and them not having to rely on backwards compatibility? Because PlayStation launched the PS4 with fuck all first party, pardon my French, sorry, with hardly any first party, and it was mainly the indie console at the start of that generation. But PlayStation managed to make sure there was third parties engaged. Phil should have done more at the start of this one, and he didn't. So that's a cross against him. And the second thing that I wanted to pose as a more of a thought point than anything else was, where do they go to from here if they're not if the current management is not going to relent and do what they need to do? Everyone complains, it talks about PlayStation cycling management. It's common practice for major corporations to cycle that level of manager, CEO, executive level, chief officer level. They cycle them every 3 to 5 years. It is not uncommon. That's how you keep things fresh. That's how you keep things moving forward. That's how things don't stagnate and end up in this position that they're currently in, because Phil's been in there for 10 plus years, and you've got the same people expecting different, but are just producing the same shit. So I don't know what they expect to change here, and why, when Satya and Amy have to come in and right the ship. But it's just, they're up against it. I don't know how they're going to drag themselves out of this with the current management, but I tell you what, they're going to have to do some serious soul searching, because they're going to be up against it competing as a publisher with the rest of them. EA and Take-Two aren't going to lie over and watch their market share in that area disappear. So, anyway, I've got to jump out. I'm sorry I've prattled on, but thank you very much. Hope everyone has a good time.
Thank you, David. Appreciate you being here.
Persona, I would have picked 2 topics, mate. So I guess.
Listen. Persona's still in. We still got 30 minutes.
This topic is still all of the same topic. It just converged off to veered off to different areas, but it's the same. You know what? I'll give it to David. You got it. You're right. It's more than one topic. One or two.
I'll shout the drinks. I'll shout the drinks at the next catch up.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it, buddy. Go ahead, Nib, and then I do want to ask Brap a question.
I was going to say I'm going to be very critical of Phil Spencer. Like I've always said, look, I think he seems like a lovely guy, right? Like in terms of like personality wise, he seems friendly. Like, don't get me wrong, right? But friendly is not what you need for games consoles, and you need someone with an eye for quality, right? First and foremost, which projects to fund, what to seek out. They had that once upon a time. Like imagine the 360 days, Gears of War, BioShock, Mass Effect, like. Project Gotham Racing, like they had quality upon quality upon quality, and there was people, even the indie games like Braid and Castle Crushers and stuff like that. They had people who were able to see this game is going to be really high quality. Let's fund this shit. And somewhere along the line, which I think it's probably Phil Spencer, because he was head of Microsoft Game Studios for a while before he became CEO and everything. And there's so many interviews and little snippets of information. For example, his opinion on Crackdown 3. He said that he thought it was going to be well received, and he was surprised it wasn't. And his points on State of Decay 2 and other games, like he's been positive about. And it's like, bro, you clearly don't have that eye for quality.
He said Stalker 2 was Game of the Year contender.
I mean, that's what I mean. I couldn't even finish that game, dude. I put in like 20 something hours, but it's not for me. But anyway. Whatever, I will get back to it eventually, but yeah, and then even the email that the FTC leaks showed, where he said, "Look, I know you shouldn't jump ahead of yourselves, but I'm quietly confident that they're basically going to dominate PlayStation this generation." And I read that email and I'm like, based on what? Like, what content?
Yeah, but the
what
thing,
game?
to play a little bit of a devil's advocate there, I think Phil Spencer, I think is really good at one, speaking, right? I do think he's good at
Marketing.
kind of like a marketing or kind
Yeah.
of like a rallying the troops, but also I do think that Phil Spencer, as much as like Xbox has not been in the best, and obviously there are a lot of decisions that have been made from last generation and this generation that kind of has continued to have them spiral downward. I do
He's
think that
kept them
Phil
alive.
Spencer, I
Yeah.
do think Phil Spencer does
Yeah.
care about the
Yeah.
fans and does care
He does.
about
Yeah.
gaming. I just think that my biggest issue with Phil Spencer, and I don't want to single him out, but because he is the head of Microsoft Gaming, obviously he's going to take the brunt of the criticism. But I think as a whole, the regime, so Phil, Matt, Aaron Greenberg, Sarah Bond, I just think the entire regime, their messaging over the last two generations has been very muddy and very inconsistent. And I think that has also has caused the ship to kind of veer off in a very negative way, but also it's puts this weird indoctrination on its fans and has its fans thinking one thing and then thinking another, and Phil even said it back when he was talking to Destin about how single player games, remember like a few years ago he was talking about how single player games weren't that good anymore or something like that. It's just the things that he has said and the things that the regime has said throughout the years, it's also
persona
led up to them.
It's literally it's to fit the narrative at the moment. That's the thing. If you look at each of them, right, each clip is a specific moment in time. It was funny because someone said last week on Twitter, they're like, talking about Microsoft's new direction. You know what's funny? Every 6 months they change direction, right? I mean, it's only right. We're not going to be putting we're not putting our games everywhere. Only 4 games. Now it's all. And then he came out and said, we don't really want to be the bad guys and say you can't play the games. And now they're all the games. That's all that's 12 months. Within 12 months, we got 3 or 4 different stories.
But I think I think this goes back to, again, even though none of us are in the back rooms and really in those board meetings, I think this goes back to the kind of tug of war, push and pull that was happening between Satya, the board of directors, and Phil Spencer and his regime. Yeah, where they were probably having that tug of war of, no, we shouldn't do this. No, we should do this. No, let's not do this. Let's do it. I think we were seeing, and I think that also attributes to, and this is why I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit, and why I do think that the messaging has also suffered so much, especially within the last year or two, is because Satya is now involved.
Yes.
Like before, I would say Satya was probably, more of a, give me an update, Phil. Oh yeah, this is the update and we're fine. But once you got that Activision, I'm sorry, I'll just say this and I'll shut up, Nib. Once you got Activision money involved, Activision acquisition involved, Satya is now not just getting that weekly update email from Phil.
No.
He's now in those same rooms with Phil, Brad Smith, Amy Hood, Sarah, and team, and they're all talking.
That's right.
And Satya is making those final decisions, and Phil is kind of, and team is kind of in that tug of war, push-pull scenario, which I think is also muddying up the messaging.
I think maybe there could be some truth to that, but let me just say this real quick, right? If you, like, Satya put Phil on the board and in his position, right? So if you do that, and Satya is not a gamer, so I think you would have to acquiesce and pay attention to what Phil's doing. Like, anyway, like, if you're Phil, are you going to want to stay working there if you're not able to get your ideas across? So a lot of people do say, I think it has a lot to do with this person and this person. It's not Phil. Back in 2016, Phil was using these same words. We don't want walls. We don't want this. Like, as long as I've noticed that Phil's been in charge, he's said stuff like this. So I think that maybe he has to make more money now, for sure. Yeah, but he should, like, he would have known that before he even got involved with that. They probably had talks and were like, whatever. Yeah. But how can he, as somebody, go and Satya, he can't go to Satya and go, hey man, what up, Sati? How are we supposed to push this next hardware? if we have nothing for it.
The thing is with Satya, the difference is that now you've got Satya's money involved. Now you've got a much bigger investment. So because the investment is much bigger, yes, Phil Spencer and team still are, calling the shots to a degree and, trying to make these certain decisions. And I do agree with you, Crap, that Phil Spencer was talking about breaking walls down and this and that, But even with those talking points back then, there was never a thought of no red lines and what we're seeing now. Yeah. What we're seeing now is something very different than... Because a lot of what was going on back then was being able to play together, Call of Duty and shit like that. It wasn't, let's release our games on these platforms and all this other stuff. Go ahead, Nip.
Yeah, I was going to say, I do agree with you. I think definitely the money conversation has changed, because even in the last the previous quarter, in the minutes of the press conference or whatever that they did, an investor asked them about ABK. They never ask about gaming, dude. I've listened to these things countless times, and they'll ask about AI, everything else, Windows. They've never asked about gaming. It's the first time I heard them ask about gaming, and I was like, oh shit, that's when the money conversation is different. But I was going to say, but I do think that is probably giving too much leeway to Phil, because one thing I will say, again, it's very negative, but I'm sure he's a nice guy, but there is so much flip-flopping and kind of a disingenuous angle with a lot of his conversations over the generation. It's loads. Like every year is the best game of releases. Cross-gen remember he said cross-gen is more of a fanboy thing. It doesn't really.
He said one year he said gamers don't care about 60 frames, and then the Xbox Series X, then it was all about 60 frames.
And then cross-gen, and then you literally have developers doing like SIGGRAPH developer conversations where like, no, actually cross-gen really hampers us. If we don't have the SSD, etc., asset streaming and all this other thing, literally physically the game, the velocity, like travel, how, the things that you can implement is completely different. So he says these things, and then even little things like with the cross-gen thing and with PC gaming, he initially said, not every PC game is coming to Xbox, and then it was like some games are coming to PC, and then every game is coming to PC, and then with this thing, 4 games, not every game, don't take it as a signal. But the thing is, when he said that, other games were already being ported. So this is what I mean by there's an element of disingenuous, because he does know more games are already being ported, but he's breaking the news. I made a tweet as a joke, like he's the master of easing it in, because that's what he does. He doesn't want to let the fans down.
That's also a case of, and again, I think it has to do with also kind of, I don't want to say being too available, but too many interviews, because when you're doing too many interviews and you're sitting in front of too many people, obviously certain questions are going to come up that you can't answer, but you want to give them something. And I think this is a case of Phil and team kind of like... I
agree with you there, Persona, because it's funny
putting a foot in their mouth.
From a news standpoint, I'm sure the gaming media, they love it when Phil... It doesn't, even if they don't get the exclusive rights to the interview, they love what's going to happen because, right, it's news. And even from podcasting, but at the same time, it's like, my God, how many of these Phil interviews are we going to get? You know what I mean? Because every time...
It's the same question. Remember?
It's the same thing.
Like last year, like I feel like last year that podcast at the beginning shouldn't have did that, because literally 6 months later the messaging shifted to no red lines,
right?
And then even that messaging shifted because people were saying, well, if as long as it's not Halo, Gears, and Forza, I don't care. And lo and behold, here we are today, 6 months later. And it's Forza and most likely going to be Halo and Gears.
And it's so annoying seeing the people that were saying, as long as it's not Halo. Now it's like, well, that Forza's 4 years old.
Yeah.
That's what I swear. I saw that today. I'm like, are you shitting me? Right? And they're like it's the same thing.
6. I would say Horizon 6 is probably going to be launching.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
That most likely is going to be day and date.
Yeah. This is like when they released Master Chief Collection and the Gears Ultimate or whatever it is, those like people go, oh well, they'll probably keep the other ones exclusive for a time. They're not, because they want the multiplayer to be really busting at launch, right? So they have something to talk up, and PlayStation people will buy the games, and they only have so many that they can do this to, right? Like Call of Duty is a thing every November, December, sure, but you have the rest of the year. But you also have a situation where there's a lot of other games releasing, and you don't want to just fart in the wind. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like a lot of these games probably won't make much noise. But Forza Horizon... Go back to
Phil Spencer's interview with Destin. Yeah. He said it. He said that the no red lines helps them from a business standpoint and from a profit standpoint.
Right.
He said, like, he's telling, like, now he's really letting you know what's really what's good.
That's right.
Because at the end of the day, Phil Spencer and team, they have to run a successful business, right? Us as a consumer and as the gamers, we're looking at it from gaming and, enjoying games or like exclusives or not exclusive, whatever. He's looking at it from the money standpoint, and from a money standpoint, putting it in places. Because listen, and again, I have to say this because I have to be honest and rip the Band-Aid off. Because people will say, oh, well, if this is going to to PlayStation or Nintendo, then they need to put their games on Xbox as well. No, they don't, because you don't buy shit. So there is no incentive to put it there, which is why Lego Horizon is not on Xbox, because you're not buying that.
There's not enough install base there either.
MLB, This is also why MLB is being taken out of Game Pass, right? Because they're not seeing any type of downfall by having to conform to a platform that is losing its identity by the day.
Right.
Losing its fan base.
Oh no, they're just transitioning their identity, according to Phil, right? Here's Forza and Halo. What? Those aren't Xbox things. We're all Xbox gamers.
There's more of an incentive for Phil Spencer to break the walls down than it is for a Nintendo or a PlayStation. PlayStation doesn't need to release God of War on Xbox in order to see a to see a return on their investment. They don't need. They don't even need to release Spider-Man 2. Nothing. They don't need to release.
I do hate his flip-flop messaging though, man. Even like, because I remember back in the day, it used to be Xbox that blocked cross-play. And then he was like all into it, and like it's just like
because he was losing.
They just changed to whatever pivot they're doing.
It's the pivot for the time period, and that's what the interview.
So the reason why they did that was because a lot of people at the time were, you buy what your friend has to play what your friend has. But if there's crossplay, you would be more apt to maybe buy something else because you could still play with your friend. But even that didn't work out how they, thought that it would, and realistically, like, people don't realize this, but they go, oh, you just care because other people get to play the game. And it's not true. So what happens is, if you like look at Xbox, right, there used to be a big community to play the multiplayer games, and now there's not. And you're forced to play crossplay on a lot of things, right? And then when you play crossplay, you got to play crossplay with PC. Right, and then what happens is you get fucked up with cheaters all the time. You know what I mean? It's like that. It really takes away from the fun of multiplayer gaming, right? Like, you can't disable a lot of that. I know you technically can from a console standpoint, but some games on Xbox will say
there's a lot of cheating going on in Warzone and Call of Duty, and I know they just updated the Ricochet, but then the minute they updated it with Season 2, it was literally a day later, maybe it was hours later, and somebody on Twitter was like, somebody already realized how to get around it, and it was like, there we go again. And I mean, so that's just a situation.
I brought that stuff up years ago, though, Mooch. Remember?
You did. You did.
Like,
you didn't want anything to do with it.
Well, don't worry about it. We're not gonna do anything stupid. You know what I mean? And then Mike got the hell out of there.
Yeah, Mike left.
And then
Mike, out of here.
They tried to bring him back in, and Mike got the hell out of there again. Like, I'm gone, man. Yeah, he's like, I'm out of here.
I got a couple super chats, and I want to move over to another subject because it's getting late here. Real quick, shout out to the great Jay Bari. He says, I'll wait for the big sale, like $5 for Forza Horizon 5. We don't need it. Shout out to Jay Bari. Shout out to X-Hawk, too, for the 10 super chat. He says, PlayStation Live Service games plan. It was a disaster, a train wreck. Got Herman Hulst demoted. We're going to talk about that in a second. X-Hawk, that's what we're going to. K-Med says, Nib just negotiated a deal with Microsoft to buy Xbox already. K-Med, shout out to K-Med. Craig Slater, thanks for the subscription, subscribing to the channel. Appreciate that. Moonshot, I'm going to read yours, but I do want to come back to it because this was an article that came out about 3-4 hours ago. Moonshot says, do you think that Microsoft pays these big gaming outlets like IGN to be favorable in their judgment towards every decision coming from Xbox? He says, seems to me like the majority of gamers are not on board with anything Xbox related yet. You'll see these outlets and pundits plead how much sense it makes. We're going to get back to that, Moonshot, so I don't want to go there. But I do want to start first and foremost. Brap, welcome to the show, buddy. I know you came in and everybody was really hot and heavy on that subject, which you can chime in if you'd like. But I do want to talk about the shakeup over at PlayStation. So PlayStation definitely...
I'm sorry, I don't want to...
Go ahead, Jez. I mean, I want to get Brap in here too. Brap, you chime in when you want, Brap. Go ahead, Jez.
Forza Horizon, do you think the Forza Horizon 5 is developed by Panic Button?
What is it?
The developer that the PS5 version of Forza Horizon 5, they're in partnership with the developed by Panic Button.
Oh,
is that
shit.
pretty ironic or not?
I hope it's a good port. I don't know.
I don't know, man. The Panic Button. I never heard of them, but the Panic Button is in partnership with Turn 10 and Playground. I just thought it was funny that it's developed by Panic Button.
That is a great name.
Panic Button.
That's what they hired to hit the panic button. No, it's very interesting, actually. I got a couple things here, and I do want to just discuss this. So, Nishino has been appointed sole CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, effective April 1st. Herman Hulst will continue as CEO of Studio Business Group, SIE. And I just saw something. Someone just sent it to me. I don't know. This is coming from Z Hugh. Jerry says Herman Hulst was reconfirmed as the head of PlayStation Studios just one day ago, and now we already have another Horizon game for PS5. So there's been, Brap, if you are here, I want to hear what you got to think about this.
Fuck that game, man. Stop pushing Horizon.
They really should move on to something.
I gotta let Eli sleep.
Yeah, let Eli take a nap. But Brap, what do you think about the shakeup? And then I do want to go back to something that, I Persona had mentioned earlier that I took a note of, but I'll ask Persona in a second. Brap, what do you think about the shakeup here? Is it something that gives a warm and fuzzy, or is it more like PlayStation's on shaky ground? Right?
I laugh when people say PlayStation's on shaky ground. To Falky's point, by the way, when companies are shifting strategies, they often will shift leadership.
Yeah.
Or they'll shift the org chart. They'll change what the org chart looks like. I literally feel like this happens at the company that I work for, like yearly. This happens, right?
Yeah.
Where there's some kind of shift of strategy, and because of that shift, or some kind of project that they're working on, or maybe they're moving people around to report to different people, and so those org charts will change. So that's not really uncommon. I know certain Xbox centric podcasts, one in particular hosted by an elderly individual, will probably make a big deal out of this and say, oh, the sky's falling at PlayStation. We know the sky's not falling at PlayStation because we look at the results, as Nib likes to say. You look at the data, you look at the breadcrumbs, right? And you follow that trail. And so it's not a matter of, this is, Sony on fire. This is probably a situation, if I had to guess, where they're, probably refocusing or pivoting or implementing some new initiative, some new strategy they want to execute on.
Yeah.
And they're putting people in the places that they feel will help meet those objectives that they have. So I don't think this is anything really it's not really like a breaking story per se, of the PlayStation being in trouble. And I just want to say something real quick, Mooch.
Yeah.
Kind of go back. I don't mean to beat the tires here, what you guys were just talking about, but I heard someone say, we kind of told you so, this was coming. With Xbox, we know the Forza's coming now. Look, Halo Master Chief Collection is probably going to be later this year.
Yep.
And then Gears next year. But look, I mean, like, Microsoft is clearly pivoting their business.
Yes.
People need to stop comparing them to PlayStation because they're going down different paths. Xbox is looking to be a publisher. They're a really big publisher in the gaming industry. I'll give them credit for that. I mean, they're going to be huge. I mean, they own some of the biggest franchises in gaming. But they're going down a different route. Like, this is kind of an apples and oranges type situation now. As much as people want to try to compare the businesses, they're a little bit different. I always compare Sony's business model to like Apple. And you see how Apple's doing. They just hit record high revenue recently.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like, look, people need to understand. There's, if I had to guess, Xbox is probably going after an indiscriminate customer who wants low cost access to gaming.
Yeah,
because there's people in the market that want that.
Not just a subscription, Brap, not just a subscription service, but also they did that this generation with the Xbox Series S, low entry. Right, that's a low entry tag to get in. Very inexpensive, $299 for a console.
It definitely worked out really well.
Well, listen, how it worked out, Nib, that's a whole other story, right? But I'm just saying that is really the kind of, that's where they're going for. That's their strategy. I don't think it's necessarily working. And some people will say, Mooch, what are you talking about? This is working. That's working. I just think when it comes down to it, Brap, and I'm kind of glad you said that, as far as their strategy and what's going on, this is where I was alluding to with Persona. People keep saying all the time, oh, PlayStation's in trouble. Listen, I'll definitely agree with a lot of folks to say that there's definitely the shakeup, right? And there's change in management. And whenever you do have a change in management, much like Brap said, sometimes there could be a change in policy. So take that as you will. But at the end of the day, when you see things like the games Persona, and I'm going to Persona here on purpose, Persona, when you see the games that were canceled, like the one that Blue Point was working on, as well as the ones that were going on over at Bend, and people say, look, that's disarray. That's dysfunction. They're a mess. Okay, listen, the one thing I said on the podcast when that news broke is I feel bad that we lost all that time with those quality developers working on something that didn't go. But what did we give praise to? Remember God of War 2018 before it came out? There was all those stories came out that Yoshida saw it, and I think it was Yoshida, and he said, this is not any good. Go back to the drawing board and fix this. Like, it's okay to be a leader. It's okay to say have quality.
I feel like that's a bad. I'm not gonna say it's terrible to compare the two, but I do think that there are some.
Well, they go in hand, don't they?
There's some gross disparities between the two because it's not like Shuhei went to Sony Santa Monica, said this isn't good, and then canceled the game, and we didn't get 2018.
But that very well could have happened.
They said what Shuhei Yoshida saw. He said, yeah, no, we need to make some changes here, fix this, do that, or whatever.
Right.
And they shifted whatever development they were doing and made changes and crunched or whatever they had to do to get it done. You can look at the documentary and it talks about all of that. But in terms of, this here with Hideki Nishino and Herman Hulst. So one, Herman Hulst has not been demoted. No. He's not been anything like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hideki Nishino was promoted and has become the sole CEO of all of SIE. Herman Hulst still has his same position as being the head of first-party worldwide studios. So the decisions that were still the decisions. Go ahead. Nick. Okay, the decisions that were being made are still going to be the decisions that Herman Hulst is making, but he now just has to report to Hideki Nishino. Now, where things to get to the canceled games, for me personally, I view it as a huge issue. People are viewing this as a win, and a large reason why people are viewing this as a win is because of their hate for games as a service games. Right.
That's fair. Yeah.
I can understand people may dislike them because they may think games as a service games are predatory or whatever the case may be. But if in your wrap up you've got a sports title, Call of Duty, or anything of the likes, I don't want to hear you talking shit, saying nothing about no games as a service. But outside of that, for me, I'm looking at this as it means more waiting. Right. So the last game, and I'll use Sony Bend as the example. Last game that Sony Bend put out was Days Gone back in 2019.
Yep.
So from Days Gone 2019 to now, that's been 6 years. Whatever they're working on, they've been working on for at least 2 to 3 years, maybe longer. Right. Now, here we are at the halfway point of this console generation, and we will now have 2 studios that are first-party studios that have not put out a game, that will not have put out a game for almost a decade.
Yeah.
Because if they do, because now they have to start over and get the idea together and all this before they can even get into pre-production and get to regular production. So now we're looking at maybe, if you're lucky, earliest 2030 that we'll even sniff these 2 studios' next project. To me, that's worrisome because that's now 2 definitive studios that now we won't be seeing anything from for the rest of this generation, which means less first-party titles, which means more waiting. And again, I'm somebody, I've been preaching this for a long time. PlayStation needs to put out a proper roadmap. Now we know why we're not getting the roadmap. But on top of that, when you look at the games as a service push that PlayStation has been doing, they flew too close to the sun. And we're seeing the fallout of that with not just these 2 canceled games, but Last of Us Factions 2. Marathon and Fair Games might be in trouble. Concord. There's a list of titles that have failed and may still fail in the future when you're looking at Marathon and Fair Games, where this fallout might not be over yet.
Right.
They flew too close to the sun, which means more money's down the drain, layoffs, possible studio closures. People can say, oh, that's not going to happen. Listen, I don't want to hear that. We're in a very different we're in a very different games industry and in the game market. Anything is possible.
Yeah,
that's my worry.
And your worry is valid. It really is. I got to say, Persona. But at the same time,
I think to Persona's point about like the gaps in development, like at least with the first party, I'm not so sure that I don't want to say they're in cruise control, but when you're the dominant player in the space you sit in, like what's the incentive for you to really put the gas on the pedal, right? Or the pedal to the gas. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you know what I mean. Like what's the incentive, right? I'm not saying that those studios aren't going to release games, but I do think that, look, I mean, if you look at how the consoles sell,
Complacency,
how their business is doing, they're doing very well, all things considering. And this was this generation was interesting because it launched with lots of supply chain issues, lots of issues with inflation. The FX didn't work in their favor either, still probably doesn't. And there's still some lingering inflationary dynamics. But all that being said, and despite not having, the kind of first party releases on the type of cadence they had on PS4, the market has responded very, very positive to the PlayStation 5. So I think that unfortunately, without that competitor kind of knocking on their door, pushing them, I don't know, like if we're going to necessarily get a roadmap. They might just be in cruise control here a little bit.
Well, no, we're probably not going to get a roadmap, but that's also a worry because again, we're at the halfway point of the generation now. We know about Wolverine, we know about Ghost of Yotei, and we know about Intergalactic. So we do kind of Death Stranding too as well. So we do have kind of like an idea of what we can expect from PlayStation in terms of first party to a degree, but there's still a large there's still this uncertainty with PlayStation, both from their games as a service initiative, but also from their first party studios entirely, because now we're seeing the fallout. London Studio has been shut down. Media Molecule is working on this. Bluepoint and Bend Studio are most likely going to be, at least for the time being, be relegated down to just supporting the big titles to get those out, to make sure that those are up to snuff, and then they may switch to going into post-production.
I could be wrong, but I think Bluepoint was working on 2 projects. So one live
on 2 projects too.
No, that's what I was thinking. I thought they weren't.
No, they were not. Bluepoint was only working on 1 project, which was a multiplayer project, and Bluepoint, we thought that they were going to be making their own original IP, but now we know that's not the case. They were making this God of War live service title.
But I thought Jason Schreier only clarified with Bend, because I know Bend was only working on 1 game, but as far as I know, Bluepoint was working on 1 live service and 1 original IP, which is, as far as I know, is still the case.
That wasn't so. What the head of Bluepoint said is they would like to have the opportunity to make their own original IP. When people were telling them they should remake this or remake that. If that's the case, that might be the case. I don't remember too much, but I know that they possibly were making their own original IP. But only thing we know now is God of War. We don't even know that though. That's still speculative. So
Yeah. No,
I will just say this though, like, and I agree with every single point you're saying. It's a fuck up, like, and it's a wasted resources, time, management, money, everything. But the only thing I would say is when I look at like the cadence of releases, right, I have to look at like what I played in 2024, and I played multiple PlayStation exclusives, and then I went through a list of everything that is announced for PlayStation. Do you know that there's like 23 console exclusives that have already been announced third party for PlayStation 5 upcoming? That's not the first party, right? So between the China Hero Project stuff and indie games and everything like that, there's way more than I think people realize. Like between Lost what's it called, Lost Blade Zero or something. There's Lost Soul Aside.
Phantom Blade
there's so
Zero,
many.
yeah.
Phantom Blade Zero, that's it. Yeah, there's loads of these types of games that are like in the works. That maybe they haven't had that much coverage or whatever, but PlayStation has so many of these partnerships in the pipeline. So I think as long as like this year, like between even Grand Blue Fantasy Relink, that was console exclusive, even though they didn't pay for that deal. And same with Black Myth Wukong, and same with numerous other titles. As long as we keep getting that slew of exclusives, yes, I would definitely prefer the first party stuff because it's benchmark pushing. It's going to have the technological aspect and the budget and everything like that. But I'm still content with the output. Like again, between Stellar Blade and Helldivers and Astrobot and everything, there's quality and diversity.
Listen, let me piggyback real quick, Persona, because I'll just say this because it kind of goes in line with Nib and your comments. First of all, everything you said, Persona, I think is gospel. I'm not going to say that you're wrong. Everything, I think, waste of time, waste of money, waste of resources, and waste of not having those two quality studios putting out a first party game right in any time soon. That's true. But just from the other side of the aisle, I would prefer that they canceled it. This is why I say it. Maybe it's just a silver lining. They canceled it. That saves another 2 years on each of these teams. That saves us. Maybe you'll try the game out and then they cancel it again. Maybe you'll get the money back. Maybe you won't. The other thing is you look at each of the generations, right? We all have short-term memory, okay? You had the Wii U, that didn't work out so great, okay? You had PlayStation with the PS3 and the cell processor, that didn't work out so great. Microsoft with the DRM situation, that didn't work out so great. Everybody's always trying something new, and then it depends just how far. It's not like you say how hard you fall. Can you get back up and regain yourself? That's kind of the thing here.
Well, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right. You know,
right? I mean, could you imagine, like, the Wii U was a colossal failure.
They said that was it for Nintendo. That was it, right?
Yeah, it was like a colossal failure. And Nintendo didn't go, shit, we better start releasing all of our games on PlayStation and Xbox and PC.
PlayStation,
right? They just said, let's put our nose to the grind and, let's make some budget cuts and
crap. Hold on a second. I just want to say one more thing, though, because Persona made a point. Like, I actually am one of those people, Persona, that likes. I don't mind the games as a service. Like, do I think making 12 of them was a mistake? Even someone me who likes them, I think that's too many, right? But at the end of the day, if they wanted to still do 2 or 3 of them and their executives feel they're good enough to put out there, I hope we're putting trust into them that they've seen enough games that they know what will work and what formula won't work. I wanted factions too, just because I loved factions, period. But apparently
that shit should have just been the multiplayer on the last.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's what a lot of people. That's what a lot of people wanted. Myself
I would have taken
included.
it.
Like, if it was Last of Us 2 gameplay style with like bigger maps and more variety and more. I would have been on that. That'd have been my game to this day. I still would have been playing.
I agree.
I never liked the whole games as a service thing because it's the way they announced it. The way they just said we're making 12 games as a service without knowing what the games were, without knowing what if they just showed the game and it happened to be a game as a service, I think it would have been a different because we could see what the game is. But the fact that they led with like we're making service games, it's like, all right, the games don't matter. It's about the service. That's what you give. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, but the thing is, these games that they're canceling, the games that they're canceling, people are saying, I think this is a blessing. I feel like that's very premature to say because we don't know what these games are.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So for me, I'm looking at it as, okay, you cancel this. That's now time lost, development time lost. That's more waiting for the consumer, for the gamer. We just got finished talking about how important exclusives are when we were talking about Xbox.
Absolutely.
So moving to PlayStation, that same sentiment has to stand because now that's less time. That's more time waiting. And we got some stuff coming right now or in the near future. But again, we have at least another 5 years within this generation before we move to a next generation. So once that first party well has dried up, you're stuck waiting and dependent on those timed deals or second party or whatever, or still not knowing what those other studios are working on.
That's right.
That's my issue. On top of not seeing these, especially if you're doing live service, these live service games, not seeing none of these games and then them just being wiped from the face of the planet. It's like, what was it? What could it have been? What did it look like? How did it go? Like, what? We know nothing, and now it's back to we're cooking. We're gonna do better. We're gonna do it. It's the same shit that's being said. And listen, I love the developers at PlayStation Studios. I love PlayStation. But the same shit keep being said. And as a longtime fan, as a gamer, as somebody that loves the projects and things that they've put out in the past. This shit can't. You can't keep doing this.
Yeah, you can't. No, and then filling it up with like a remaster and a movie and a PC port.
We've gotten more movie and TV show announcements than game announcements from PlayStation. That's absolutely disgusting. Like I don't agree with that at all.
Personally, I do think
enough of that.
But I do think part of that is just because they've transitioned to announcing late and releasing late, right? Because if you look at Astrobot. They announced it in 3.5 months later after the announcement. They released it. Like they've never done that before, really. Like with their key titles. So I think we'll see more of that. And I think I could be completely wrong, and I'd hate to be. And if I am wrong, I'm gonna complain about it because I already complain about Naughty Dog so much, even though they're my favorite developer. Like I cuss them the most on my Twitter. But yeah, I hope the fact that they've announced Intergalactic, knowing how they fucked up with factions, means it's quite soon. And it's going to be a case of like they're sticking to this. We're announcing closer to the release date thing instead of what they were doing in the past. But we'll see.
Shout out to Raji. He says, and this is what I was saying to Persona, and I understand that Persona's not saying it's parallel. It is not an apples for apples, but it goes back down to one of the things I said a long time ago. You guys know, everyone that's been here, I've been saying this since I think 2018, Xbox, I thought, needed new leadership a long time ago, and I'm not pointing to one person or one name. It's a group over there. I think they need new leadership a while ago. So I'm going to read Raji's comment, and then I'll go back to what I said again. And I do see Persona's point. He says, making a decision to end the game development despite the progress is a lot more brave than you're all are giving it credit for. There was praise for Yoshida coming in to talk God of War, talk to the God of War team. Parallel decision here. I see where you're coming from, Raji, because that was the example I used. Persona made a good case to say it's not parallel. It's a little different in this case because he went back, he told him to go back to the drawing board, and then that game was not only fixed to like precision, then it released, okay, where these are not. So that's where Persona's saying it's not an apples for apples, which I think Persona makes a point. The only thing I have to say, though, Persona, and this was what I was getting at, is, okay, silver lining, not the greatest thing in the world, not the great, but you have leadership that saw something that said, this isn't going to work. Instead, just to look at the counterpart, you had Redfall, and you had everybody saying, this game's going to be amazing, right? And you had the Xbox staff being like, this is going to be great. You wait till you get your hands on Redfall. They played the game. It wasn't ready. It wasn't good. The whole nine. I'd rather they just canceled it, right? Because they wasted that team's time, their resume, right?
The thing with Redfall.
One thing, Persona, real quick. One thing, real quick, and I'll give you the mic. Is that we're also how do you miss when it comes to the game itself something we didn't even know existed? That's the other thing. Like people
with Redfall, we saw Redfall and saw that looking at the gameplay, we saw that and we even said, that doesn't look.
That don't look right.
Good.
Right. It doesn't look right.
It looks worrisome.
Right.
Like we saw it.
Yeah.
Right.
So like we could also make come to that conclusion as well. And if Phil Spencer and team would have canceled it as well, I would still be saying the same thing for that. We still need we know nothing. We've seen
They did the same shit with Concord. The stupid ass beta. Concurred. They did the same thing with the beta. People pissed off at the beta, said get rid of this, they just let it go and they just put it out as is, like, and it was just like they tweaked a couple of things, but like people were hating on it from the beta. Like they should have saw the writing and read the room and go, yeah, we're not releasing that shit. It's gonna get destroyed, man. But they didn't.
I mean,
They
it
didn't
got
listen.
canceled 2 weeks later. I think Concord gameplay was great, but
look,
it got canceled in 2 weeks. So that tells you how bad the game was doing.
And they lost a lot of money on that thing, and that's why heads are rolling right now. And they're changing, man. That scared the shit out of them.
With Concord,
Sony FAFO.
Yeah, Concord was a situation where I think they had some talented developers there with Firewalk. Okay, hear me out. They bought the company in 23, I believe. They released the game in 24, right? So the game was pretty much done. So the bad decision was the person that was whoever it was that you guys can say it was Jim, you guys can say it was Herman. That I'll let you guys take the mic there. But one of them saw that game and said this has got potential. The problem with I think Concord and Persona, you know this, we played it a decent amount. The game was polished and played well. The thing is, it didn't bring anything new to the table. And that's what happened. X-Defiant got hit with the same thing. X-Defiant didn't play bad. It wasn't broken. But X-Defiant didn't bring anything. Like, I was like, oh, so I'm playing Call of Duty multiplayer. Cool.
Not just that. The unlocks and stuff were crap, dude. It just didn't have enough content.
Oh, you think it didn't have it? Well, that's fine. I'm saying it didn't bring... The modes were named something different, but it was basically...
Yeah, but a lot of people... See, but a lot of people that were looked at Concord was dismissing the game because it had pronouns and they didn't like the character design. This had nothing to do with the gameplay or the game itself, because when you look at the gameplay, map variety, and things like that, Concord, I think, did really well. Now, I do think they should have made a single player component.
Yes.
And they
bring something new. Yeah, bring something to it.
They had more. This game definitely should have cooked more and had more betas and alphas and more community engagement for sure before putting it out completely. But what they did put out, I do think, was a sound and solid gaming experience from a gameplay mechanics perspective.
Nobody said it was broken. Nobody ever complained any of that. And that's fine if you're saying it was the situation with the pronouns, things like that. That's fine. I'm saying the people that came to me, they were like, Mooch, why would I go spend money on that? You're just offering me basically, it's either like Destiny multiplayer or it's like Call of Duty modes. So what do you bring into the table? Everyone's already. This is the problem with the games as a service as it is. You have people playing Warzone and Fortnite, right? Then you have your Apex folks. Then you have your Escape from Tarkov folks, right? Those games are out there and they've swallowed pretty much everybody up. And now someone's trying to actually go out there, and you had Helldivers strike oil, right, with an extraction game. Now you have Marathon going to be an extraction game, right? They're going to strike gold twice or hit oil twice with the same. I don't know. I don't think so.
I got a feeling. I personally think that Fair Games is going to get canceled. And Marathon is probably the only last live service that they do.
That might be the smartest move.
Because that's Bungie and,
Because listen, Persona, that whole, like, if Fair Games' game is legitimately like a Payday, I played Payday. Like, Payday, that's not my bag.
Payday 3 is in that PlayStation service, dude. Payday 3 is ass.
It's not good, So if I pray to God that Fair Games is not mimicking that game, or there's not even a reference. Don't even cross-reference that. That's horrible.
The problem too was the way they rolled it out. They rolled it out as like, oh, we're gonna have episodes and TV shows. Like, who cares?
Yeah, nobody cares about that.
And they didn't lead with gameplay and showing why the game was different, why the game should be played. So it was a whole fub on that. They messed up on that. And Fair Games, again, I think that's another poor showing too. They showed us the title, and then they showed us a CGI of people running around stealing from the rich. And in the game, it's like Payday. It's like, okay, well, that didn't sell me on it. And Jade Raymond's been trying to make a game for the last 20 years since Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. I'm not feeling good about those two games. I have to admit.
Fair Games is fair shit. It's done.
No.
I reckon Marathon as well.
Marathon too. Bungie can kiss Bungie a piece of trash right now. They can kiss my ass.
Yeah, I don't know what Bungie's.
That's not the Bungie Halo Bungie.
The Final Shape was great though. So it's actually their best received title since the last 8 years.
Yeah, they were definitely
got to prove themselves. They talk too much. There's a lot of problems over there. Like they're a mess. So they've got
a lot to prove, and I hope they got a great concept, because we haven't seen anything yet. And let's also remember, Bungie's the one that was walking around telling what do you call it there?
Running their mouth.
Well, they were saying that the factions too. That's never gonna make it. That's not how you do it. So that's fine. But then you better put your money where your mouth is. Shout out to Impatient Fire. He says people would be mad if Sony released a game that flopped. Sony has a reputation to keep As much as I hate canceled games, I hate bad games more. And again, I don't think anyone's really disputing you there on Patient Fire. I just think that Persona's point of lost time and waste of developer talent there. And it's us that that's two. I was really looking forward since they acquired Blue Point. I wanted Blue Point.
Shut down the whole studio. They let those people go. They bought them and cannibalized them. They fired them all. That's the craziest thing, especially with these service games that we see, is that when they fail, the company fails.
Yeah.
Like, they don't repurpose them and say, you know what, do something with the assets and make a new game. They are like, no, the service is done, you're done, and shut this down. Never happened. And that was the scariest shit. Like, that's crazy.
No, I agree with you. Pardon me, I was coughing. I had to mute my mic.
Sorry, I don't know.
I think that's a valid point. So what do you think here? So I'll ask Persona. Persona, what do you think with the changing of the guards, right? And that situation, do you think you will see PlayStation shift any strategies moving forward, or do you think they'll stay status quo?
No, because Herman Hulst and Nishino were co-CEOs, which means that they both were making specific decisions. Mm-hmm. Now that Nishino is the definitive CEO and Herman Hulst reports up to him, that doesn't necessarily mean that the strategy is going to shift. Now, I do think that with the failure of Concord, that did shake up the games as a service initiative quite a bit. And obviously with the layoffs and studio shutdowns last year as well, that happened, and a lot of the layoffs that's happened so far this year. I do think that for PlayStation, there's definitely some shifts and some changes happening behind the scenes. We're seeing that for sure with the cancellation and all those other different things. There's changes happening, and I do think that they are holistically looking at their catalog and trying to determine where they want, how they want to move next. But at the same time, I do think for Nishino, he's a hardware guy, so I don't really know his practice or how he's going to influence Herman Hulst in what Herman Hulst is trying to do. Right. That only time will tell. But as of right now, I don't see this. I don't see the shift necessarily being as significant as people maybe hoping it will be, because again, they both were co-CEO writing the ship at the same time. And
I will say this, Persona. I made a tweet full of his quotes and stuff of things that he's said right over the last few months, Nishino. And I was looking for quotes about live service, and I fucking so many pages worth of interviews. I'm like trying to, dude, you must have said something about live service, right? So maybe someone in the comments can help me, because I know they had dual interviews between him and Herman Hulst, but I realized every answer about live service was from Herman Hulst. I couldn't find any quote. I couldn't find.
And it's going to be because again, Nishino was the hardware guy, so he really had.
No, but what I mean is, but Nishino did talk about games. He talked about single player games. He talked about other types of strategy around games.
He even the hardware.
And he even spoke about PC releases, and he said he only views PC releases as a means to pull people to PlayStation platforms.
That's a very old school way of thinking from the PS4 generation. I don't necessarily.
Okay, no. I'm saying this interview was only from a few months ago, and he said they don't want PC to cannibalize PlayStation market share. They are looking for it as a means to draw people to the PlayStation platform. Right? Literally only a few months ago, and then
you be careful.
Yeah, and then other interviews he said the console will be the core of our business for a long time to come. He said, I don't know, I've got a whole bunch of things. So, to me personally, when I read these, and it's not selective, I've tried to find the opposite side of things to be more damning, but I just couldn't. Maybe someone can help me out and message me some quotes he made about live service or something else, or PC releases that are not just to benefit PlayStation. But so far, the things he's saying, it seems like it's kind of back to the old guard of thinking. And if they have positioned him to be, the primary CEO of SIE, then maybe they are pivoting back to what worked before. And maybe this live service experimentation and everything is they're veering away from that in a greater way than we realize and going back to the bread and butter. I hope that is the case, but we shall see, I guess.
Yeah, but that's why I would prefer, in layman's terms, having the hardware guy lead the company, because be the CEO, because you know what, if people stop by his hardware, then He would be out. So, so he's leading with the hardware innovation. So I'd rather have that. And Herman, I heard that at his desk they gave him back his buttonless shirts because we need the Herman with 3 buttons undone, chest hairs, and gold chains. He was walking around wearing too many turtlenecks as co-CEO and not putting out that quality. So they had a whole lot of buttonless shirts for him. And he's like, "This is great. I got to wear my shirt." So hopefully Herman goes back to his buttonless shirts and chest hairs, and we get back to that shit.
There's always, when it comes down to it, Jez, there's always a possibility that things can change. We always say on the show, never speak in absolutes. But when you look at it, PlayStation's already discussing the PS6, and they're already talking about this, and they're already talking about that. They are so dependent on the console. It's their strategy. I definitely think if they have any games as a service, or if they're going to, remake a game from the PS4 era, if it's going to go day and date to PC, of course. But once you do launch on PC day and date, you say, well, Mooch, where do you get your evidence? Xbox is the evidence. They have, right? There's your evidence. What it does is people go, well, they'll make so much more money. Whatever you'll make up on the PC side, you will lose on the console side. And the console, they're a hardware business. They want you to buy the console. They want you to buy the Portal. They want you to buy the headsets. They want you to buy their LinkedIn headsets. Their special, all their controllers.
They lose a lot more because once you lose that 30% cut, like let's just say, okay, you sell 4 PlayStation or Xbox exclusives to someone on PC, right?
Yeah.
But if they had bought your console, they would have bought 15 titles, right? And bought X amount of microtransactions on Call of Duty, you would have got 30% of all of that plus the first party games.
That's right.
And the first party games. So there is a reason PlayStation's revenue is growing so much. It's like, what, 30 billion? Just keep in mind, right? Even Steam revenue, fiscal year 2023, was 8.8 billion. PlayStation's is 29 billion.
Right. And let me go one step further. If people say, well, Mooch, that's not going to happen, I don't believe you, then that's fine. Don't believe me. Take a look at the other juggernaut out there, right? Nintendo. Nintendo is coming out with the Switch 2 any month now. And they're staying to their traditional practices. If they were going to know they were going to make so much more money doing it another way, they would do it. Right? I mean, do you guys agree with that? I mean, that's the other thing. I look at Nintendo. Nintendo's not changing.
Phil Spencer actually said it himself. If you look at the quote, like when he was sitting there with Grubb, Gaming's Mankind, and he he sat there and he was talking about shipping Halo. Like, we could put Halo 2 on a PlayStation, but that's not how you look at it. It's like, well, would you? And he was talking about the way of exclusives, and he even said in another interview about how exclusives are marketing beats. They're marketing beats that you do to bring people. Then he said another quote when he was at the beach with the Times, and he was telling them that people choose the console based on exclusive games. Like, that's how you choose the console. Like, Nintendo has theirs, and he's mentioned his. Remember, he was talking all exclusives back then, and that was just a few years ago. And it's sort of like, that's the whole point. And I think Sony realizes, like, their IP is very valuable to them, and they got to make sure that their IP comes out with quality. Because I was saying this, like, with if you look, Spider-Man 2 just dropped today on PC. Mixed reviews, not a great port.
Not a great port.
What does that do? Is that strengthen people to say, oh, I can't, like, this is a great IP, Sony quality? No, that's not good. So they got to sort this thing out. And like I said, FAFO. The other thing is that a lot of these canceled games, these service games, those were the ones that were going to PC day and date. So we're canceling those. Their day and date now kind of gets wrapped up now. So now they're kind of, because those were
That's
the
a great
ones
point.
that
I didn't think about that. Yeah. The day and date ones with PC, those got canceled.
Yeah.
You're seeing Spider-Man. They didn't do any
stopping that day and date.
No advertising really at all for the Spider-Man to PC launch.
Exactly. So weird. It was so weird.
So weird they stealth dropped it, and it's not a great port from Nixus nonetheless. I think that's what did it.
You know,
but even like with their third-party publish, because I know this whole thing about Square Enix moving back to multi-platform, right? I always say yes, that could be because they weren't happy with the results, but it could also just be because PlayStation doesn't feel the need to spend tens of millions on the exclusivity deals anymore and marketing, right? Maybe they just think, well, this isn't not worth the ROI because it's going to cost us 50 million, 100 million. And if it does come out on Xbox, it's not really going to sell much on there anyway. So what are we paying all this money for? So that could also be another reason. But then when you look at the sales, I get it. It's not day date on PC, so that is going to eat away at some of the sales. But look at Final Fantasy 16, right? 25,000 or something, 27,500 concurrent players, and are estimated, based on the analysis firm or whatever, they estimate 289 sales. It did 3 million in a week on PlayStation. Right. So then the next question is, okay, if it's selling so abysmally on PC, a year or whatever after it launched on PlayStation, why aren't PC gamers buying it? Because when we have staggered releases on other consoles, like if it's a Deathloop or Tomb Raider comes out on PlayStation, it still does really well on PlayStation. When GTA comes out on PC, it still does really well on PC. So why in particular are those games doing so bad in a staggered release? And it's like, either the PC gamers, they really don't like waiting for games if it's already been on PlayStation, which I doubt they're that political about it, or a lot of the PC gamers, which the PlayStation data shows, already own PlayStation or are buying into PlayStation. I think 1/3 owned a PlayStation console, according to Sakana, active PC gamers. Or the ones who already have a PlayStation are already buying it on PlayStation, therefore they don't need to buy it on PC.
They're not double dipping.
Yeah, and if that is the case, well, guess what? It's actually more cognizant on Square Enix to get that money from the console side of things, because the console RRP of the game is higher, and they didn't have to do the sales and stuff. Now, obviously, it launched a year later, but generally games can be slightly cheaper on PC. So they would actually make more money from each sale on the console. So, there's all these things to consider. I know Square Enix is saying that, multi-platform, one platform, but based on the data that we've seen and historic data where, like, for example, less than 10% of Final Fantasy 15 sales were on Xbox, and that was back then. Right. Now there's even more cannibalization, right? So, maybe they'll find out that porting those games over is not going to make the difference that they think it is. It all depends on the game, right? Different genres do well on PC and on console, etc. It seems like Final Fantasy has kind of just doesn't have as much interest on the PC side, whereas the kind of WRPGs and stuff like Path of Exile and Baldur's Gate, they do gangbusters, right? And then the games with the Chinese kind of confluence, they do amazing as well, like Black Myth Wukong and Power World, but it's a very selective thing.
Yeah, and you had mentioned the number of second party, third party deals that Sony has coming through, and a lot of that is with that initiative that's going on with China as well that they have working with them. But Jez, you made a point to say that the games that were canceled were PC first. The other thing is GT7's PC port is shelved. No plans to bring to PC. So it's another game that was going to go to.
I think it would have done good on PC.
I think it would have done very good on PC. Yeah. But they're not doing that. So maybe, I don't know. Everyone immediately thought, that's why Persona, I asked you that question when we first started out, was everyone thought because of the new leadership, or at least it's not really new. Like you said, they were there, but the pecking order has kind of changed. Things would change. But if you look at the actions that happened right after, people go, wait a minute, they've removed Persona. They removed the PSN requirement. Well, listen, that's business. They looked at it. They're like, hey, wait, we're putting the games over there. They don't want to. They don't want to do that. I hear you. I'm not saying that that's necessarily great. I'm saying to you though that they want to make money on PC, so they just took that off. They're like, well, now buy it. There, buy it. Now you buy it over there.
No, that's weakness.
But I don't know.
That's weakness because at the end of the day, your fan base, the main core fan base, still require PSN, have to pay and all of this, and then PS Plus, you're removing PS4 games and doing this. No.
Well, wait, but the PSN,
that's weak as hell.
But you don't get, but if you don't have the PSN over there and you don't sign up for it, you don't get the perks that are on the console.
Yeah, but my point is when you and listen, PC gonna do what PC do. Like, right. It is what it is. My issue isn't necessarily PC; it's PlayStation's response to such a thing, right? Because when you allow yourself to be pushed around like that, what else will you cave on? What else will you renege on? You get what I'm saying? Like, PlayStation has no stance, and it makes them come off as very weak. Because Nintendo's got a stance. If you mess with a Nintendo property, they suing your ass. They don't give a fuck who you are.
That's
you feel
true.
me? Like Nintendo's stance is very strong and very firm, and this is why they're respected the way they are, and people fear doing certain things with Nintendo because they know how Nintendo gonna come, rain down the sword of Damocles on their ass.
Right.
PlayStation, on the other hand, well, maybe we'll do it. Maybe we won't. I know. It's just like, all right, man,
I think it's gonna catch up with Nintendo. All that shit. Like I think so.
No,
I think a time.
Nintendo been around since the 80s. No.
Like, I want to ask you guys a question. I know it's on the topic here with the Switch 2. Do you think the Switch 2 is going to sell more than the Switch 1?
Yes.
I don't actually know.
Yes. You know why? Because they're gonna re-release the same shit from Switch 1 to Switch 2 with better resolution.
Yeah, right.
No. Yeah, it can be compatible all the fucking once. They're gonna do we're talking about Nintendo here. They're gonna do remasters and re-releases of their most popular titles from Switch 1 on Switch 2 with better resolution, better frames, and all this other shit, and people gonna buy it.
Man,
Bro, they are going to do a Zelda double pack. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom remaster releasing on the Switch 2. You not buying that for shit for 70? Knock it off.
I'm buying it.
I got
Of course. And this is why Nintendo will always be able to get away with the shit they could get away with.
Persona, let me ask you a question. Are they going to do a cross gen?
Nope.
Set of games or no? Everything starting in April on is all
release the older version of it.
Nope.
Because they have
Nope.
All right. If they don't do that, then I think
they
Persona's right.
Once that Switch 2 drop, they moving on. That's it, bro.
Really? You think that? Like they did say that they did, but they did highlight it's backwards compatible. But they did say like the Switch 2 releases. Like, yeah, I agree with Persona. I think they're gonna stop making like Mario Kart 9. There's no Switch 1 version.
Nah, Mario Kart 9, that's gonna be Switch 2 exclusive because they're trying to get people to buy Switch 2.
Do that. They're not gonna. Nintendo does that.
Yeah, they're not doing that. They definitely
gotta sell. They gotta move those consoles there.
So
they want to do that install base because they got to get the developers, and also too, I think this is gonna have huge third party.
Bro, listen, the launch lineup,
a lot too.
The launch lineup for the Switch 2 is gonna be this. Book it. It's gonna be Metroid Prime 4. It's gonna be Mario Kart 9. It's gonna be Zelda Breath of the Wild or Breath of the Wild Tears of the Kingdom double pack. Remastered, better resolution, graphics, and frames, and all that.
Yeah,
those 3 games within themselves is going to sell that. It's going.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Move units. It's going to move units. I'll tell you, just those 3 games by themselves.
Ultra. So here's a super chat. I appreciate the super chat from Ultra, but I don't agree with him. He says, "Well, bad take about PC here as usual." He's like, Final Fantasy 16's director even admitted in an interview that waiting to put the games on PC doesn't benefit them in any way. Also using Iconera, which I think he's referring to as a source as a new low, guys. Is it that's NPD?
Iconera. I don't use
Iconera. Oh, using Iconera. I thought he was talking about the with the new Circana from the NPD.
No, I'm not using Iconera. I'm not even on that.
We're not using
I'm not even on that forum. So, I mean, they may have
here's the thing.
Something similar, but
when it comes down to Final Fantasy 16, if you're a Final Fantasy fan and you're a PC gamer, you're gonna no one bought it. It was a year after it released. Like you're telling me that PlayStation took the shine from if you're a Final Fantasy fan? I don't know.
Ultra, did he buy Final Fantasy 16?
Yeah, Ultra, did you buy Final Fantasy 16? Ultra? Just let me know in the chat.
Or did you steal it?
Look, if you love Final Fantasy, right?
It depends. If he responds in a super chat, then he stole it. If he just responds, then
make it make sense to me, right? If you're on a specific platform,
right,
and a game comes out on another platform first, if you love that game, you're excited for that game. What difference does it make that it came a year later? You're still going to buy it.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, PlayStation gamers are still going to buy Forza Horizon 5. It doesn't matter.
Nib. Let me excuse me for 1 second while I interrupt you. So wait, Ultra. Let me ask you a question, Ultra. So the 1 year release, staggered release for Final Fantasy 16 made all the difference, right? So you're telling me nobody on PC is going to buy GTA 6 a year later, right?
Yeah.
Is nobody, you're not going to buy
on PlayStation.
You're not going to buy GTA 6 because it didn't come out at the same time as the consoles. Like that doesn't. I'm just not. I don't know. I'm not buying that. I don't know.
Final Fantasy has always been synonymous with PlayStation. That's not anything new. So the fact that, it's sold what is sold on PC, I'm not going to say that the director, Yoshi P, is wrong. Like maybe, if it released day and date would have had penetrated the market a little bit easier within the PC space, sure. That could be said for many games outside of Final Fantasy 16.
Right.
But there still was a marketing deal and there was the timed exclusivity, and that's what it was. But that's also why Square Enix, they're saying they're moving away from doing these deals and putting things on their day and date. So the next title that releases, it's going to sell 3, 4, 5, 6 million releasing on PC, correct? Because if it doesn't, what is that? What does that mean?
Yeah. And just on that point, right? Not every game, like Helldivers 2, I believe, did better on PC than it did on PlayStation, right? So we take that on board.
It's the most higher play too.
Yeah, but then look at Call of Duty splits based on GSD and Sakana. So GSD in Europe, 16% of sales were on PC. Only 10% were on Xbox, and the rest was on PlayStation. Right? In the United States, 84% of Call of Duty Black Ops 6 sales were on PlayStation platforms. So there are games which just don't actually sell that well on the PC platform. It does happen. Like it's a game by game thing. So it's not like every game is gonna sell an even split. There's going to be games that sell better on PC. There's going to be games that sell way better on PlayStation. Like Persona said, Final Fantasy just has that correlation with the PlayStation brand, and hence, and I do believe that a lot of PC gamers who are interested in it probably already bought it on PlayStation. Or loads of them are just pirating it. I don't know what the real reason is.
Yeah, I don't. They're not. Could be any of the above of that. I mean, that's something like if I had my favorite game, or just picking a game out of, you say Borderlands 4. Let's say Borderlands 4 was going to PC for a year. Would I not pick up Borderlands 4 when it comes to PS5 Pro? I'm picking it up.
Why wouldn't you? I don't.
Why
get
wouldn't
it.
I pick that up? I don't. I mean, that's so I don't quite understand that. Like, I just think, like you said, there is genres of games that don't sell. Some sell better on PC than others. That's fair. I mean, that's not even a bad thing to say. That makes total sense.
Different audiences sometimes. Like, different genres. Different
absolutely.
Games. Streamable games, I think, do a lot better on PC.
Civ 7's coming out in February, right? Civ 7 will probably sell a lot better on PC than it will on console.
Exactly. Age of Empires,
right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we got the split from Silent Hill 2, and it was like nearly 80% of its sales were on PS5 and the remainder PC. So we do have games all the time that just don't sell as well. And then other games, again, that do really well, like Monster Hunter, from what I understand, does particularly well on PC. Mm-hmm. Whereas weirdly, Resident Evil did much better on consoles. So again, we'll see.
And that's why, just where you put your game doesn't automatically equal success. We've seen that a bunch of times, like with games getting put on everything. And it's like, also too, you got to think of the dev time to be putting it all day one on multiple platforms. What does that do to optimization and things like that? Do you get a bad version and stuff like that? So I think, they have to be, it's not just always a W just because it's like, it's on billions of places. But, Microsoft has learned that lesson as well.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so we can look at free. Exactly, and I was going to say, like, that is the best use case because from 2016 or 17 onwards, Xbox put all their Xbox games on PC day and date, right? And we heard this same thing, just as we heard Game Pass is the future. We heard, they're selling to an extra 600 million people or whatever on PC. The install base is even more than PlayStation. It's going to change their fortunes. Their game sales are going to skyrocket, and actually, their revenue growth was substantially worse. In fact, it was flat. It was flat. Now, obviously, Game Pass cannibalization comes into that, but their games have charted less since they've done day-date PC releases than they charted before. So, the revenue hasn't increased. So, something isn't adding up. Like, releasing on PC didn't make the difference. Again, I think part of that is because part of it switched to cannibalization instead. So it's not like necessarily a lot more people bought it. A lot more people just left the Xbox platform. So there's a lot of data to sift through. I don't think it's as black and white as people make out.
Agreed. Stanley Buffington says Santa Monica has a game canceled, and the rest of that we got I believe saying God of War. Canceling these games is better than releasing further damaging the brand. We kind of went over that a bit, Stanley. Appreciate the super chat. Spidey Sal says, when are we going to drop the Xbox term and just call it Game Pass? Xbox always referred to the console, and the console is dead. I think, it's funny because, Jazz, I remember you saying this a while ago, too, as well as many others, that I was wondering when they would just rebrand, right, and just go, Game Pass. Game Pass really is their gaming. Well, that's the thing. So I got someone sent me. Well, it was on Twitter. I'm just trying to find it right now. Someone said, "Hey, did you see what happened when it came to when you look at if you were to go and wish list? I guess Forza Horizon. It doesn't say Xbox under the picture. I'm trying to find it. It says Microsoft Corporation.
I think.
Yeah, here it is. Here it is. Yeah, Forza Horizon 5, Microsoft Corporation. Now. That may be nothing. You guys might go, well, dude, it's Microsoft Corporation. I know. But I'm saying to you, I would, Xbox Game Studios. No, it says Microsoft Corporation on the wish list shot that someone sent me. So Spidey Sal, I don't know. I don't think you're going to, I think the Xbox name will be around for a bit longer. But appreciate the super chat. I know you're listening from the beginning again. What do you think, Chaz?
It's a very confusing term. Like, even when Phil did all his interviews, like what Xbox is, the Xbox, like I said, like the community, and you got to, you see all the fan fest. And I was going back and watching some clips of like what they did and stuff. It's hard to, like, once you commit to that culture and you basically built that fandom of your brand and all that stuff to kind of, be at the point that you are now and thinking that you're not going to get pushback or questions and just try to spin it that, like, oh, it's okay, you're part of the community if you go buy it over there and this thing. It's like, I still consider you my friend. And it's like, it's weird, Phil. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just strange spin. And you're right. Like the Xbox brand has been in an identity crisis, and
big time.
Still lingering it on, like, even in the thing, like, well, you're in the community. If you buy, like, so you mean that the people that go to FanFest is a dude that booted up his LG TV and plays Microsoft Cloud, he's going to FanFest? Those people are those are not LG and Samsung TV players. Those are console players, maybe some PC mixed in, but like, that's who they are, and those are the people you got to talk to.
I will say though, Mooch, like, to pivot to like a positive aspect, right?
Yeah,
because I watched that, like, what's it called, their direct thing, the game
developers thing, direct.
Yeah. And in my head I was thinking, oh my god, it's so weird because they actually have, for the first time, like, a really strong first half of the year. Or, I mean, it could be strong. Obviously we don't know, the games haven't released, but between like Doom and Ninja Midnight, or whatever it's called, and there's a slew of games, Avowed as well. And I was thinking, like, if all of these were exclusive, Expedition 33 or whatever it is, which I think looks incredible, by the way.
Expedition 33 looks very good, yes.
Yeah, it looks very good. If all of those were exclusive, then this is basically what I wanted from Xbox for a very long time. Like, have this cadence of exclusivity, but it almost feels like at the precipices of when they're finally starting to get that cadence.
Yes, is
when it's all going multi-platform. It's just such a strange thing because, like, otherwise I would have celebrated the console.
It is, but we just rewind to back when Persona, Nib, you were saying it. I think David was saying it as well earlier. Yeah, you're right. This is what everybody was waiting for. If this was exclusive, it'd be a reason to have an Xbox. The problem is once these things all became exclusives, these big acquisitions with Bethesda and Activision. But once that money was spent, then, like you said, you had Satya, you have the investors, you have Amy Hood, you have these people coming to the table that weren't there before. So all in all, now they just couldn't, because now there's so much money invested. They've got to get all of that money back. Shout out also to Hero Down Under, who had a great answer when we were talking about why it doesn't say Xbox, it says Microsoft Corp. He says SIE won't allow them to advertise Xbox on PlayStation. Listen, whether that's true or not, it's an interesting point to why it says Microsoft Corp. But yeah, I think that's the thing. We all waited for that point to get here, Nib, and now here we are where they have these games. Although you stop and look at it and it's like, okay, I said this back just after Starfield released. Starfield didn't move the needle for Game Pass. Halo didn't move the needle for Game Pass. Call of Duty did something, but not necessarily exactly what they were thinking for Game Pass. So is South of Midnight or Avowed going to do it? Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
I think, that article that a lot of Xbox fans hated from the information, like that they were slandering it, and they said, despite Activision, Xbox is dwindling, basically, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact word. And they are right. In that article, one of the fund managers for Microsoft stock, he says basically the reality is like the mass of consumers just actually isn't interested in Game Pass. And I know people hate that answer, and it's like, oh, what is he talking about? But it's just the data shows it's true. Like, it's been around since 2017, and growth the last few years has like stagnated. And even Call of Duty, the biggest game in the world, pretty much, couldn't move the needle. So at some point you just have to contend with the reality that actually, in terms of the wider demographic of consumers, the interest for it is just not there. And it goes back to the conversations we've had in the past about how the way you consume media or games is very different from like Netflix. It's not a passive thing where you can just have it running in the background, have multiple episodes of something going. It needs intense engagement, and you don't actually play that many games that where you might have constant shows and episodes and things running in the background. It's just a different type of engagement, and most casual gamers don't play that many games a year. So it just doesn't have that same wide draw, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. And I did keep the great gaming with Persona here for a whole 3 hours. For Nib, this is nothing. Nib's like, I'm going to just make breakfast, and he's going to go right to work. But I do appreciate you guys being here this long. Outstanding show. It's almost 3 hours we did the show. I want to say thanks to everybody. Outstanding chat. Almost still 400 of you guys here. And I even saw when we were getting low to 4, everybody kind of came back. It was great. The conversation was amazing. I want to thank everybody for the super chats as well. I'll say good night to the great panel that's here, and then I'll do a couple plugs for the people who had to leave early as well. Please, guys, hit that like button. Still 380 people here, guys. And I'll let Nib take the microphone, but please hit that like button before Nib says something. Nib, say something that encourages a like.
No, that's not like I was going to say, because I can see it now, right? I can see they're going to say, oh, what does it matter if the games are exclusive or not? You still get to play them. True. I will still play them on Game Pass, and I'll still enjoy them. But the difference is I wanted a platform with exclusives that can compete with PlayStation and hold their feet to the fire, right?
Yes.
I actually wanted a platform that steals market share away from PlayStation the way that the 360 did. Yeah. Because if there is high competition, it's actually better for the consumer in the long run. Yes, some of you will have to spend more money or whatever, but at least they're going to be on their A game, because one can immediately lose to the other. So they're like constantly having to be, whether it's with policy, with prices, with innovation, with games, with whatever, with the deals that they make, they're literally fighting with each other constantly for your dollar, right? Whereas right now there's complacency. Like the PlayStation doesn't really have to worry in the future because you can get everything on PlayStation. So that is why, for me, I still valued having exclusives. One, because of the competition angle, consumer angle, and two, because I like having games designed from the ground up for a specific platform in terms of optimization, content curation, time and devotion and focus that you can give to a single platform instead of having to spread your development team thinner across many. I just think that has a higher likelihood of better results, especially technically and in terms of sort of production and stuff.
Yeah, no, and I think everything Nib just said does require a like button attachment to it. Nib, outstanding point as always. Nib, I don't know. I'm still waiting for you to have your own YouTube channel. I don't know why you're waiting. Only thing I can think of is you're probably opening another 2 restaurants, which, by the way, I will be visiting. At some point, I have to come visit you. I don't care how or what, but food is like, I'm a big-time food fan, so there's no way I can't not get to a restaurant.
You just a food YouTube channel.
Listen, I got a yeah, why don't you do that?
I would love to.
You could talk about gaming while you're making stuff.
There you go.
I've just been busy with work, man. I'm going to be away for almost a month on a business trip. So
you better send me those dates, because I can't book you then. Well, listen,
are you a head chef, right? You're a head chef or owner? Proprietor?
No, I'm the owner. Yeah.
Okay.
Listen,
you go in there like Gordon Ramsay.
Jazz, he could.
Yeah, basically.
Jazz, there's no way. There's no way.
You out. Kick him out of the kitchen.
Chaz, there's no way he could do the cooking and talk. That food would burn. You ever hear Nib go on a rant? Nib could do a 45 minutes.
The biscuits are burning.
I got news for you. I listen. I hope in English you got an A+, Nib. I mean, those tweets you put out. I mean, I'm shocked Musk isn't charging you double.
I am happy to say that I did. I did indeed.
Shout out to Chad Study. Goes, there's your like, Mooch. Chad, you've been here all night. You hit it now? Guys, hit the like button, please. Let's get up to 200. I don't even know what it is. You have to hit refresh for me to actually see them go up live. But no, I appreciate everybody being here. I'll go in reverse order as everybody hits the like button before they leave. Still 342 people here, guys. You know what I mean? Take a second. Pick your phone up real quick. Go, you know what, Mooch? Just this one time, fine. I'll hit the button. Hit a button.
Hit a friggin' button.
You know, it's fun to hit a button. I used to think, when you was a kid, why not? You hit a button. I'll go in reverse order here. Persona, I want to say thanks for being here, buddy. I absolutely love when you're on here. I listen, I was watching the chat as you were talking. I don't know. I think they love you, man. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't see any hate at all. Nobody arguing. Persona, you don't know what you're saying. Where'd this Persona guy come from? They were all at me tonight, Persona. So hopefully I was acting as a shield. I'm not sure. But Persona, looking forward, of course, to the great What's Up PlayStation coming up on Saturday. Let people know where they can find you. And as always, thanks for being here, especially for 3 hours.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. First off, man, Mooch, always appreciate the invite, bro. It's always good
always
coming
Persona.
through, chopping it up. Shout out to the panel. And shout out to the chat, man. The chat, they love your boy, which is always good. So, shout out to the chat. Make sure you guys definitely hit that like button on your way out. Support my boy Mooch.
Thank you.
And share the podcast out as well if you can. And as for me, I am Persona, gaming with Persona. And, it was great being here tonight. It was a great conversation, very insightful. And, man, shout out to everybody. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, Persona. I know Persona doesn't. Him and Jay Barry have a staunch rule, but they allow me to break it. I like to promote them. Listen, I got hooked on What's Up PlayStation years ago. Listen, we talk about gaming news. They talk about gaming news, but they talk about games. They talk about a lot about in-depth games they play. They do their spotlight. They get into exactly what's coming out. They talk about the PS4 and PS5, now soon to only be PS5 games coming out on PS Plus, but they get into the nitty-gritty of all the games. And that's just, for me, like I said, that's just a motivational thing. There's so many games I've played because of their recommendations on their show. So go over and check out What's Up PlayStation, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Persona, thank you. And shout out to the great Jay Barry as well. Shout out to Nib as well. Nib, listen, it's what is it now? My God, 10 o'clock. It's got to be, it's late as hell
3
over
a.m.
there. 3 a.m. over there. My God. God bless you. So I want to say thanks for you as well, Nib, for being here. I know it's late, and it's outstanding to have you.
I really enjoy being on this show, to be honest, this podcast. I wanted to be on last time, but I was just so tired.
When I wrote
that's when you're old. You wake up and you don't even have a duvet on you. You're cold. There's like a bit of drool, and you're just like, oh shit, I'm supposed to be.
No, I mean, I looked at the clock and I said, wait a minute, he's always on time. So once I said, I go, Nib, are you awake? Did you see what I wrote you? Nib, are you awake? I got an answer at like 7 a.m. in New York the next morning. Yeah, I am now.
I read that message and I was like, oh, you are getting old, dude. When you get a message like that.
Yeah, right? You're getting old when someone's like, are you up?
Yeah.
It's only midnight, Nib.
There's days when I was young, I used to do like 3 days without sleeping sometimes, when you're just on a bender.
No
like now I can't even go one day.
That ain't happening no more. Not at all. But Nib, let them know where they can find you, and let us know when you're starting that YouTube channel. Go ahead. Put the secret out there.
Though it's just a Twitter, NIB95_. But maybe there could be something in the works. I'm speaking to some people. We'll see.
You should, buddy. You really should think about it. I know you're busy, so it's difficult when you own a business. It's round the clock. But I want to say thanks for being here, Nib. I appreciate it. The great Jez7780. You guys know him. The Gaming Grindhouse. Jez, it started off on Monday night, but you're almost becoming like primetime, like night TV. I mean, you're on Monday, you're on Wednesday, you'll do a Friday show, and then he's on Saturday, he's unboxing something. I mean, listen, it's great. Right. I love it because the content's never ending. But let people know where they can find you. And thanks for being here tonight, Jez. I appreciate it.
And, awesome show, man. And thanks again for your invite. I know, like, I wanted me on last week. It was been crazy. A lot of stuff going on. January is always a busy month. But I'm glad I got on and I was able to stay on the whole time. And awesome conversation, guys. Like I had a blast. And hit that like button, get the Mooch over to 200.
Please
share out the video. We'll also hit the like button because we got to go watch Saquon Barkley run around now in the Super Bowl.
Man, it's gonna be rough.
Oh my goodness,
what a rough.
I was surrounded by Eagles fans and they all like pointed at me, and I'm like, Saquon Barkley go run around the Super Bowl now, insane. So feel bad. Hit the like button just to feel bad for us. So but yeah, you can follow me. I'm over at Jez7780 on X. And then putting up my memes and all my fun stuff. And then on Gaming Grindhouse on Monday nights at 8 o'clock. And then I just do stuff during the week. I do highlights. I do unboxings. I've been doing 3D prints to show, and I've been making a lot of game things. I did a Ryu Hayabusa mask there. So I've been doing that stuff. And then I also do the Gaming Grindhouse music. So all fun music on the topics of the week. So, follow me over there at the Gaming Grindhouse. But thanks again, everybody. Hit that like button.
Thank you, Jess. Appreciate you being here. Just a couple quick shout outs. Shout out to Death Singer. He said, Mooch, listen, I'm coming 7 to 8. Then I got to leave at 8 o'clock. I'm doing another show. So shout out to Death Singer. He'll be back next week with us. Brap, who stopped in for a bit. He's got a lot of sports events happening on Thursday nights. That's at Brap_podcast. And he moved Brap to Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. Go over and check him out. Shout out to the gaming, the great Gaming Forte. Forte did a video as well over on his channel. Go over and check him out. They're doing DPS podcast right now. If you go over and see DPS in slow-mo and Gaming Forte, tell them Mooch sent you. Great show. They do 9 p.m. right after we end around 9 o'clock, so we went a little late tonight, so I apologize to the DPS crew. They do a great job over there on Thursday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern. And also the great Crap Gamer. Crap's got, you guys know this, Crap. Crap has a 2-hour limit. That's just the way it is. Listen, his agent signed him for just 2 hours a show. That's the way it is. That's all I can get. That's all I can get. It's at _Crap Gamer and Crap Gamer Reviews over on YouTube. Go over and check out Crap. And shout out to David Faulkner as well, as I like to call him, the gaming community's accountant. That's at Faulky87. So great to have David with us as well. Great show. Everybody was fantastic. Guys, hit that like button. We'll see you next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, go game. We'll talk about games and news next week again. Peace out. Good night.
Peace, everyone.
Yep.
Mooch, how many topics did we get through?